The peace and tranquility of the market town of Compiègne, about 50 miles north of Paris, is broken once a year by the arrival of all the cars and the competitors for that Queen of the Classics Paris-Roubaix. And this year, of course, will be no exception. Welcome along, everybody, to our special edition here of Paris-Roubaix here at World Cycling Productions. I'm Phil Liggett, joined, of course, by Paul Sherwin, who once upon a time rode this event, didn't you, Paul?
Well, I did, but Phil, I think that was an awful long time ago. But you know, the thing that I always enjoyed about Paris-Roubaix was it was a special occasion, a special day. And if you were just a little bit mad at the side of your mind, then you really enjoyed this race.
Well, there are those riders who do actually enjoy it. And you know, the winner since 2004 is taking part again at this time around. So we've got at least 4 winners looking for a second victory. It's 53.5 kilometres of cobblestones this time around. The roads we know as the hell of the north. The weather is a strange one today, Paul. 1 minute it's hot, 1 minute it's cold. Next minute it's raining, next minute it's dry.
That's the very strange thing, and everybody I think has been watching the météo, as they call it in France, here all week to figure out just exactly what kind of a Paris-Roubaix we can expect. And some people are saying the winner will be different if it's a wet Paris-Roubaix or if it's a dry one.
Well, one thing which always stays the same is we finish on the velodrome at Roubaix. But before we leave the town of Compiègne, Sherwin's going off now to meet the riders.
Well, George, it's been a long week really since the Tour of Flanders. How's it been for you? No injuries, no illness?
No, it's been a long week. Felt okay, and again, I'm a little bit tired from the hard Tour of Flanders. But I took the day off on Thursday, relaxed. And now I feel much better, and I'm ready to go for tomorrow.
People always say that to win a race like Paris-Roubaix, you have to have a strong team. But looking at your team, you've got Servais Knaven, who's won it before. You've got Roger Hammond, who's finished on the podium before. You're a man who loves this kind of bike race. Is this the best team you've come to Paris-Roubaix with, do you think?
Absolutely one of the best teams, for sure. I mean, all the pieces are in place. I just got to have a super day tomorrow, which I hope I will. And I should definitely be up there.
The interesting thing is that nobody really knows what the weather's like. It's very nice here this afternoon, but people are saying it's going to be a wet Paris-Roubaix. Will that suit you?
Yeah, it should suit me. There's not many people that can ride the wet cobblestones better than me. But at the same time, when it's a wet Paris-Roubaix, you got to have a lot of luck. So I'm going to have that on my side. But if it's wet or dry, I'll be ready.
Would you say you're 100% ready for this one? You've been knocking on the door, George, for so long.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Paris-Roubaix tomorrow. The weather today is quite good, but most people are saying it's going to be a wet Paris-Roubaix. Is that the kind of race that you're looking forward to?
I never did it in the rain, so I don't know. But yeah, for me, rain is no problem.
This is the kind of race that suits you. You've been so close in Tour of Flanders on 3 occasions, and here in Paris-Roubaix you were very close if it hadn't been for a certain train ride.
Yeah, and flags and other stuff. So I hope it's going to be right today. No bad luck.
You have the form, you have the morale to do a good ride. Are you motivated for a strong Paris-Roubaix?
Of course, always.
What's the team strategy going to be tomorrow? Is it all for George Hincapie, or have you got a free hand and Servais Knaven a free hand?
Well, we haven't discussed the tactics yet, so that's something for tonight that we're going to sit down with the management and talk about it. But you know, the problem with these races is you can't put all your eggs in one basket, you know, and that's our strength in this team, is that we've got a few guys that can win the race, and you know, George can profit from that. You know, it's not everything on him, and he can take a little bit of a back seat and take the pressure off him a little bit, and let the rest of us race, you know, which was good for all of us.
I think from an American sports point of view, it's quite good for George Hincapie, because maybe for the first time he'll have the best ever support in the finale.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I envisage us having at least six riders in that last group, you know, that's the 20 guys that are going to the velodrome. You know, well, okay, it's not going to be 20 guys at the velodrome, but, you know, when the critical point happens, there'll be 20 guys left. And I reckon we'll have 6 guys there. And, you know, that cannot be a bad thing, you know. Look at when Quick Step have won Paris-Roubaix. They've always had 5, 6 guys in the front, and that's what's made them win the race.
Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you. See you later. Have a good day, mate.
Watch you on the telly. Right, it's been a hard week, I think, because not only did you ride Tour of Flanders last week, Gent-Wevelgem in the week, Pinot-Cerami, and now this.
Yeah, it's actually been a hard week, but I'm actually, to be honest, I'm actually starting to feel like myself again, and I'm actually starting to feel good again. It's been 2 weeks I haven't been going too good, but I think I'm starting to get myself back into shape.
You do realise that this race is going to be live on Mnet in South Africa, so a lot of South Africans are going to be watching this.
Yeah, I think over the years the South Africans have actually started to get a taste for the classics, and you know, the last couple of years it's started to get a lot of coverage, and yeah, like I said, tomorrow live, it'll be interesting. I think the guys back home are really starting to enjoy the cobbles of Roubaix.
It's a special race. It's a race that you really have to be motivated for. Are you up for this one?
Like I said, it's been a hard 2 weeks for me, but I think after Pinot Giremi, I had a decent day out on the bike, and I started to feel like myself again. So I actually am motivated, and I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but if the weather's good like this, then we'll give it a good bash.
I don't think it's going to be like this.
I don't want to hear that. Anyway, thanks, Paul. Cheers.
Baden, nice to see you on Team Barlow Worlds. It's always difficult to find a team where you're comfortable, but I think this year you've finally found somewhere where you feel good.
Yeah, the team's working out really well for me. It's a really tight bunch of guys that work well together. That we've been winning a fair bit this year, so hopefully we can pull something off tomorrow.
It's great to have a team that's getting victories under their belt. I know the team had a lot of success this week, but what about Paris-Roubaix live on Australian television? That's got to be quite important because all the mates are going to be watching back at home.
Yeah, my brother told me that him and a few of his mates having a Roubaix party is staying up and watching it. So it's really great that finally Australia's getting the coverage for cycling over in Europe that they deserve. So it's really great that everyone back home can watch it.
Yeah, but 5 o'clock in the evening European time. What time's that going to be in Australia?
I think it starts at 10:30 at night, doesn't it? But I'm not sure how late it goes. It might finish at 2 o'clock or something like that.
It's going to be a late night for some of the boys. Are you going to be up there at the front to show off the colours of Team Barlow World?
I think so. I mean, the form's really good, and I think I should have had better results during this Classics campaign with the form I've got. So maybe tomorrow it'll start paying off.
Good luck, mate.
All right, see you later.
Stefan, when it comes round to Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix, we still think about you as a man who just loves the classics and the cobblestones.
Yeah, I love it, but I was sick last Sunday. That was really bad for me, and that was the point I decided that will be my last season.
Well, maybe your last season. Couldn't you just push it forward for another couple of months just to finish up maybe on the eve of Paris-Roubaix like Andrea Taffy did a few years ago?
Yeah, that would be great to do a good job here, to be in the stadium or maybe on the podium. That would be the best way to stop.
Great, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Bye. This has been a phenomenal week for Spanish cycling. Tomorrow you can make it just a little bit different if you can become the first Spaniard ever to win Paris-Roubaix. That's your dream.
Well, it's been my dream always to win here in the road to Roubaix. So, of course, adding that it's been a fantastic week for our country in cycling. Well, but I would like to, if I win, to be remembered as Flecha won. It doesn't matter if I've been Spanish or whatever.
How is it possible for a Spanish rider to be so much in love with the cobblestones when most of the Spanish riders, they like the mountains?
Well, I think you can ask the same question to some Dutch guys like Hessing and Thomas Dekker. They are so good climbers, and they live a flat country. So there's something about to love the hardest, and this is the hardest race. So maybe that's the reason.
We wish you good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Tom. How are you?
Hey guys.
Well, Tom, the big race for the end of this week, Paris-Roubaix, you didn't win the Tour of Flanders. Do you feel the pressure on your shoulders?
The team did win. I didn't win. The press is always there, and I think that we can't worry ourselves now because everything is fine. The legs are fine, condition is fine. And tomorrow is Paris-Roubaix. We have a lot of experience in, so just hope for a bit of good luck, and then everything will be fine in the race.
For many years, really, Team Quick-Step or Team Mapei have dominated this race, but for the last 2 years, the victory's gone to Team CSC. Is that where the rivalry will come from?
They have strong riders. CSC is a very strong team, also a very hack team. I think they always stick together, and with O'Grady and Cancellara, they had the two best riders in the race. But we'll see. I think this year we have a team that's able to compete. It's not only me, it's also Stan and a lot of the different riders who are also able to do a final. And I don't think we have to worry about being less strong. I think we're equally strong, or maybe even more.
But it's always difficult in Belgium because although the team won last week, Stein de Volder won last week, the Belgian press pushed Tom Bonen to win races. They want you to win.
Yeah, it's not fair. Huh? I mean, it's not fair to ask somebody for an explanation when the team's winning, you know. But in my case, sometimes they do. But we were riding to win the race. We did a tactical move with pushing Stein in front. It was a tactical move to help him and to help me, because everybody wanted to chase him, but they were afraid to chase him with me in the wheel. So I think it was the most logical thing to do. And Stein was really strong that day, and he deserves to win.
Some people say that Paris-Roubaix is a race better suited to you. Do you think that's true?
I only won it once, and Flanders I won twice, but it's true. It's a race. It's more fair. If you don't have any bad luck, it's more fair. Not only the good guys get in front.
Well, Magnus, last week, not a bad performance by the team because Slipstream got a guy finishing up in 12th place. That must give you a little bit of confidence for the classics.
Yeah, Martin had a really good outing, and you know, he's still young and he's shown that he's still got a lot to come. And you know, for the future, I hope he'll be able to win one of these races one day. So it's looking good. We got a good, strong team. We're all healthy, and we're all prepared for these couple of weekends. You know, so I'm looking forward to tomorrow myself.
I tell you what, though, when you've won a race like Paris-Roubaix before, it just gives you that little bit more confidence, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, if you won a race before, you know you can win it again, and if everything works out 100% tomorrow, then I know I'll be in contention. So, I mean, Paris-Roubaix, anything can happen at any given point, so obviously you need good legs, but as well, you got to have a certain amount of luck involved, and let's just keep our fingers crossed that I got some luck finally.
You also need to have a strong team as well, and maybe that might be a downfall towards the end because a lot of the young guys are still learning these races for the first time.
Yeah, they're still learning, but at the same time, they're very, very motivated and very keen on riding. And, you know, we've still got a couple of strong boys who'll be able to do a fair amount of work pretty late on in the race. And, you know, it all depends on how the race sort of develops as well. Sometimes, you know, you end up in a group of 10 men with 60 Ks to go, and, you know, it's every man for himself then. So we'll see tomorrow how it goes, and, you know, we'll be out there and trying to win.
I did hear that a certain Magnus Backstedt was praying for it to rain tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know why my mind keeps on doing that, but you know, I quite enjoy when it rains. It's a little bit sketchy the first couple of sections before the field sorts itself out, but you know, rain or shine, I'm gonna give it my best tomorrow, and hopefully we walk away with a new pavé.
Hello everybody and welcome to our coverage of the 106th running of Paris-Roubaix over a distance of 259 kilometres. As we join the action here, the riders have just started some of the rougher roads, and these are the three leaders. They broke away after around about 92 kilometres, and we've got Matti Pronk, Jan Kijks and Alexander Serov, the four men, and that's the latest gap, Paul. 5 minutes 40 seconds ahead, 130 kilometres to go.
Well, Phil, they've been over 6 sections of cobblestones so far. This race consists of 28 individual sections of cobblestones. making up a total distance of 53 kilometers of probably some of the worst of the roads you'll ever find in the northern part of France. The main field is still very much compact and keeping themselves together. I don't think they're too worried about the 3 riders at the front of the bike race, because they are thinking about what comes in about an hour's time, and that is the very famous cobblestone section of the Forest of Arenberg. That's not necessarily where you win this bike race, but you certainly can lose it.
Well, all of the big action still lying ahead here, but even so, at this early stage of the race, one of the big names is out. Thor Hushovd today, abandoning early on after a little bit of a tumble, and so the Norwegian rider not in the race anymore today, as we now head on to what is in total 28 sectors of pavé today. And very good conditions at the moment. We've had a few spots of rain. It is reasonably chilly, but I'd call this weather just now perfect for racing, Paul, with that strong back wind. We were getting up to speeds of 55 kilometers an hour early on.
Well, we're coming into another section of cobblestones here. This is 133 kilometers to go for the main field. It's a 3-star section of cobblestones, 1.7 kilometers long. It is a very difficult section of cobblestones, as you can see. This is the excitement at the front end of the main field. This is the section called Vertin to Saint-Martin. Well,
sorry.
Just looking at the weather conditions, Phil, you have to be very careful on a day like this, because although a lot of the cobblestones are fairly dry, if you look at either side every now and again, you will see little pools of mud and little pools of water. Now, if they get splashed onto the race section here by the cars and the motorbikes that are in front of the race, that actually makes it very dangerous.
And these riders know the course. Most of them, all of the ones with any ambitions, have been out with the teams on Thursday and Friday of last week to check out the route. They tend to go for the last 100 kilometers of the route. That's where all the... Oh, there's a crash straight away. And down goes a rider from Skill Shimano there, and he's pulled his bike very well. It looks though his bike frame is snapped in two.
That machine actually snapped in two, and that's a very difficult thing to happen, because you don't fall very well at all, because all of a sudden something is taken away from below you. Another incident at the back here. There's a rider there from Landbau Credit. He's got a problem with the back tyre. That was Ian Stannard.
Yeah, the British rider who's getting his first taste of the cobblestones, and he's finding out there's that crash there of the Skill Shimano rider. Sadly, I couldn't see who it was, but what happened is fork crown snapped. Very lucky, Paul, he didn't have a serious accident there.
Well, I've seen that happen on a number of occasions when the machines that riders were using were starting to get very light indeed. They started using carbon fiber about 20 years ago, but then in those days they would stick them together, individual tubes with a kind of epoxy resin. And unfortunately, these cobblestones will test anything to fracturing point.
Well, this is the rear of the group on this sector of pavé number 23. Remember, we count down to sector number 1, which is only a short stretch just before we swing into the stadium. It's a sort of kiss the cobbles goodbye stretch. They're quite smooth, if cobblestones can be smooth. And looking up at those fluffy white clouds and blue sky, this is good weather now for the riders. As I say, they've had a little bit of rain, but nothing to talk of. The cobbles, the big concern today, I think, is the dust, which will be kicked up later on by the cars, motorcycles and the breakaways as they try to establish.
Well, the weather forecast here in France has actually threatened rain over the last couple of days, but it doesn't seem to be appearing in the skies here from the finish line in Roubaix. If it does rain in the latter part of the afternoon, that will completely change the face of this bike race. Struggling at the back here, one of the riders from Team Tinkoff is having a very difficult time there, and that in fact is I think just slipping off the back there for Tinkoff. That was Pavel Brut, and that's a bit of a surprise to me, because he is a very good bike rider.
He's one of the strong boys on that team. It's a Russian-sponsored team, and he's had a couple of good seasons. Youngster coming into the sport from the amateur ranks, as they do, top end of the elite cyclists now, and beginning to settle in. Well, I think it was Tom Wieler's, the Skill Shimano rider, who went on the cobbles there, and a very nasty shock indeed, as we're heading up now towards the next object, which is the cobblestones at sector 22, which is some 6 kilometers further on. But this is this is Dennis Flout, who's also, and there's somebody else in the spot of bother from Barlow World there.
Well, that's a tough time to have a mechanical incident, because the nature of this race, by the way, is the fact that what happens is when riders get dropped behind, the team cars that normally look after the riders very quickly in a bike race are sometimes a minute, 2 or even 5 minutes behind the main field, and that makes it difficult to get a quick service. Dennis Flout, by the way, he was brought in at the last moment. I'm not surprised he's struggling a little bit, Phil, because in fact he was involved in a nasty crash just last week in the Tour of Flanders, and I think he's still trying to get over that.
Well, there's one or two riders having a little bit of trouble from midweek races, but there's also been a lot of riders here I think have been hiding the light under a bushel and waiting to just show their real fitness at this time of the year in the next few kilometres. People like Cancellara, Tom Bonan. They're all up there near the front end. They've got to keep out of trouble. Dodging these cobblestones is a skill in itself, and holding position at the front. Back up with the leaders. They got away at around about 90 kilometres into the race today. We are now around about 130 kilometres into the 259. Matti Pronk, who went from Kohlstrup, quickly joined by Jan Kijks, who's shown us already this week. He's on good form. And Alexander Serov from Tinkoff, he got up last of all to make 3. Philippe Gilbert did try to reach them. He chased for absolutely ages, but he's now been picked up by the field.
Well, 125 kilometres to go. The next section of cobblestones will be the very long section from Verchin to Kiranon. It's a very difficult part of the course we're coming into now, because we're zigzagging from small town and village to the next small town and village to find these section of cobblestones, some of them which have been around for over 100 years. But I think, Phil, as you see the damage that last section of cobblestones did there, these riders are all really thinking about the Forest of Arenberg that comes at 95 kilometres to go. It is a gruesome section of cobblestones. It's only open once a year, just specifically for Paris-Roubaix.
Well, that's absolutely right, but these smooth roads must feel absolutely smooth right now after the rattling they've just had over the previous sector. And time to repair the damage and get back, and hope you don't make the same mistake next time around. Just look how that peloton has split up. You see the guys at the front, strong enough to hold position, are actually freewheeling virtually here now. They're recovering from the chase, while the boys behind, flat out effort to get back in the heart of that big pack. And very shortly we will be on sector 22, so there's no time to recover. Once you're on the back heel, Paul, you're in trouble.
Well, that's it. And Tom Bonan actually explained Paris-Roubaix to me a little bit. He said the important thing is it's actually the kilometre before the section of cobblestones which is the hardest, because you're battling as you are in a race to the finish of a big stage. There's number 1, Stuart O'Grady, and he was the man who won this bike race last year. He's getting rid of his shoe covers. Stuart O'Grady has hidden his form a little bit, I think, Phil, over the last few days. He rode well and solidly in the Tour of Flanders. He was pretty good in Ghent-Wevelgem in the middle of the week, finished himself in the top 10. But here you can see he's trying to ride himself back into this race.
A little bit of a surprise. He's been caught off
here.
Yes, Cancellara's here. And so something has happened at the time they were on those cobblestones, because these big boys are in the wrong part of the peloton and they need to get back up quickly.
Quick Step had a problem there. I think that was Tom Bonan, because I saw a flash of World Champions bands there on the right-hand side. There's a lot of incidents happening here. That's why you've always got to ride at the front end of the main field. You've got to avoid the little nasty crashes. And I think there'll be 1 or 2 riders trying to get themselves back into this bike race. There's Tom Bonan.
Big Tom stripping down for the action today, Paul. Now, talking to Stuart over the week, he said he made a big mistake in the Tour de Flanders. The sun came out in Flanders last week, so he took off all his wet weather and warm gear, went back and gave it to the cars. Seconds later, he was in an ice-cold hailstorm, and so maybe he'll be a little bit more careful today.
I think he will. Nobody really knows how the weather is going to develop here in the latter part of the afternoon. Tom Bonan, as you can see, has got himself stripped down for racing there. Got rid of the long arm warmers. A lot of pressure on his shoulders this afternoon coming from the Belgian press. I wonder if the fact that he's wearing number 51 is going to bring him any luck.
It's the famous number, folks. It's the number that's won the Tour de France more times than the obvious one, number 1. And the next one, I think, is number 11. Stephen Roach wore that number when he won the Tour back in '87. Well, he doesn't look too concerned about being caught out in that back split, does he?
Well, he's not got too much to panic about at the moment, because here they've got around about 10 or 12 kilometres of good smooth road where they can relax, recuperate, make sure they've got food and drinks on board before they start to battle for the more important sections, which come just a little bit later on.
Well, this is the action behind the race now. It's like 2 races in one here. The cars are fighting to get to the riders, as well as the riders fighting to get to the front. There's no calm moments in Paris-Roubaix. The nature of the course, all the villages we pass through, and then onto the cobblestones and off again. The field is continuing to break up.
No, they will take a little bit of time here just to get themselves sorted out at the front end of the main field, and they will then start to make a serious move and a serious acceleration once we get a little bit closer to the Forest of Arenberg.
Well, there's the front half of the peloton. Now, clearly something happened to Team CSC. They're getting themselves back into the action. The Belgian champions jersey, reminiscent of a week ago here, Stein de Volder. He finished up the winner. We thought he was spending far too much time at the front of the race last week. The result was he rode away on his own. And he's a teammate of Tom Bone and Paul. They've got two leaders. They've gone out of the traps as two leaders of the team, haven't they?
Yes, they certainly have, definitely. I mean, after a performance like that of De Volder's last week in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, he must certainly be tipped as a possible winner of this bike race here this afternoon. But I do think that Bonen has been really looking to do well in this race. The Belgian press are coming down very hard on him, which I find a little bit unfair. After all, he played the perfect teammate last week to help his team get the victory. And at the end of the day, this sport is not really about individuals. It's about teammates and teamwork. And that's how Stein de Volder got himself the victory. And I'm sure if he'd been caught, Tom Bonen could have come up with the win. He was strong enough to win last week.
But I've just seen the time gap there, 5 minutes 6 seconds, which means that it's the first reversal we've had for those three riders. They were out to over 5:20, but this little flurry of excitement, big riders being left, that's caused the chase now from the front. These are the three leaders. And just to remind you of them, Jan Kijks, Matti Pronk and Alexander Serov. Serov is the back rider here at the moment. In the middle is Jan Kijks, and at the front Matti Pronk doing all of the work. Just now 122 kilometers to ride, but virtually all of the pavé to come. We're heading to sector number 22 just now, and we count down to sector 1.
Yeah, Sector 1 really is just a little bit of a ceremonial section of cobblestones, not too far away from the turning into the velodrome. To me, the big sections that we will have to go over will, of course, be sections like the Forest of Arenberg, Mont-Saint-Pével. Over on the far side, 101 there is Nick Noyens. He rode very well last weekend as well in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. He got himself a second place. A little bit of a renaissance for him, because a couple of years ago when he raced for Team Quickstep, he was regarded as a big man from the future. There's 51 sitting precariously at the back end of the group. Tom Bonen, obviously not a worry in the world. He has to, I think, Phil, wait until a little bit later on in this race. But once we do get closer to the Forest of Arenberg, he's going to have to be very attentive and ride a lot closer to the front.
Well, at the moment that peloton is regrouping there, and the boys at the front have got themselves spread across the road, so there's nobody can move forward or backward right now. They're going as one complete pack all the way towards the Forest of Arenberg. Now, we're heading for sector 23 just at the moment. We head into the Arenberg at sector 18, which is 164 kilometers into the race. So we expect to be about 100 kilometers, more or less, from the finishing line once we get into the forest. By the way, this year we might see the police out in force, because they decided to crack down on the drinking of alcohol in the forest. Not too sure why, apart from the fact it is basically illegal. They've turned a blind eye in the past, but maybe the crowd was getting a bit too excited with the riders coming into that nasty cobbled stretch.
Got caught out a few moments ago. I saw a rider at the back end of the main field, Phil, for Team Crédit Agricole, with the Norwegian champions bands on his shoulders. Well, in fact, that's Gabriel Rasch riding for Team Crédit Agricole for the first time, and he's a former Norwegian national champion at the under-23 level of the sport.
Well, here we go. Should be sector 22, unless I blinked and missed one, but I doubt that, as the riders now head up this little rise. There's no hills, of course, in this part of France as we head towards Belgian borders, apart from just the odd little rise up, which doesn't affect these boys, but there's plenty of cobbled roads. These two riders just now working well together. They know they just got to stick at it, plug on and hope, because the action, now the cobblestones are starting to come thick and fast, then so will the reaction. The peloton will always be alert to problems for other riders they're concerned with, like we've just seen with obviously O'Grady, obviously Cancellara, and if those boys drop behind, others will turn the screw a little bit tighter.
Well, you can see this rider at the back here is just keeping himself over to the right-hand side. It's a very dangerous thing to do when you're in the main field, but in a small breakaway like this, it is not quite so bad, because at least you can see what's going on ahead of you in the main field. And here they've got a fairly open road that they're going over, but you can get a chance here just to see how nasty these cobblestone sections are, and I think everybody will be quite happy that it's dry here this afternoon. Acceleration at the front there coming from Matti Pronk. He rides for Team Cycles Koolstrop. It's a small team, but they got themselves a wide car selection into the race here. Now this is Stein de Volder at the back. It doesn't look like he's got a mechanical problem, but he's waiting for his team car to come forward.
Well, de Volder's done that jersey proud. He became only the 5th rider to win the Tour de Flanders while he wore the championship jersey from Belgium. He has terrific form, he knows it. He's not a big rival, but his best friend Tom Bonen, who also captains the team, he shares the leadership at Quick Step today. If one fails, the other one hopefully will make it good. Chance to look here, Paul, at the lead police. When you see the two police like that side by side, they're the very head of the peloton. We call that the envelope. Nobody's allowed in behind those two policemen, but except the referees, of course. But you may have noticed they're riding motocross bikes. The only time they use them is here on Paris-Roubaix.
And in fact, the television motorbikes are also motocross motorbikes as well, just because of the very nature here. These, by the way, are the Giants of Flanders, the French Flanders, that is, and it's something that comes out to any special ceremonial event. And this is what happens if you come off your bike, and this is one of the riders again from
Sonia Duval.
Yeah, and he's gone down pretty hard, and that in fact is Raúl Alarcón, one of the Spanish riders. I tell you what, it's very unforgiving when you go down on these cobblestones, because unlike bitumen, which seems to give a little bit, the granite doesn't give anything at all.
Well, he went down on sector 22, I think it was, or 23, when we saw the other riders go down. The thing about Paris-Roubaix is it's a reporter's nightmare. They can't be everywhere. Things go unreported. But when you get into the showers at the end and manage to speak to the riders, you'll be amazed at the stories that come out.
There's a story. Every bike rider who finishes Paris-Roubaix has a story to tell of something that happened to him during the course of the day. The most important thing is to not really look for good luck in a race like this, is to make sure and hope that you don't have any bad luck, because more often than not, it's bad luck that will rob somebody of a chance of victory.
Well, pressure being put on here by Matty Pronk again at 119 kilometres to go. He's first to lead off the cobblestone sector, 22. Clearly a man who can ride them best, the Dutchman there for Koolstrop. Cycles Koolstrop back in big-time sponsorship.
You'll also notice at the end of nearly every section of cobblestones there are a number of team cars. It's somewhat illicit, but basically they're putting team cars at the end of the cobblestone sections, and the order goes to the riders: if you have a flat tire on the cobblestone section, keep riding the bike, wait till you get off the cobblestones, and then you can change and put a new wheel in, because if you have to wait for the team car, you won't have any chance at all. You'll lose minutes.
That's right. They draw their plans of action here as if they're planning to go to war. The teams have their meetings. They've got maps all over the floors of the hotel rooms. They are planning where they position their helpers, their team cars, so they hopefully can save their man from being in a spot of bother and get him back in the race and keep him running so he rides at or near the front all of the way to the stadium in Roubaix. It is a survival. I remember the great Roger de Vlaming, Paul, who is the man who's won this race more than anybody else. He never had a flat tyre till the last year he rode, and I think he rode 11 Paris-Roubaix.
Yep, that was very unlucky for him. He was such an incredible bike rider, very agile on the bike. He could float over the cobblestones, and he rode in a sensible way to avoid getting the little flints at the side of the road. Roger de Vlaming made his name really as being the man who would ride all of the sections of cobblestones instead of looking for the little bit of dirt to the side, which is sometimes a bit smoother but prone to creating flat tyres.
Tête de la course, the head of the race here. Pronk was the man that caused all the problems and got away first, joined quickly by Kykes, and then Serov got up, making these three riders up front. The Koolstrop team riding pretty well as they come on, and Tom Steels is the man who's in charge of Landbau Credit, the team of Jan Kykes just now. They've only started with 7 riders, by the way, and we saw Ian Stannard, very good young under-23 international for Great Britain, now getting his first bite at Paris-Roubaix, and on that sector of cobblestones he had a problem, and I think he's probably chasing right now. And there's been a crash here, and George Hincapie is the man in trouble. Maybe it was just a puncture, but a quick wheel change, routine perhaps, and Hincapie quickly back into the fray.
Well, he was helped out there by his teammate Marcel Seeberg, who passed the wheel across very quickly to Hincapie. No panic at all for Big George. He's going to ride his way through the convoy of cars. You see, he hardly lost 2 positions of cars with that wheel change there. But what he's got to do now, Phil, is wind his way up through the crowd. And this, I have to say, really, if you're going to have a mechanical incident, was probably one of the best places to have it.
Well, George is quickly wants his bad luck out of the way at the beginning. Sector 22 for the leaders of the peloton now. They're all on it now. There isn't much room around there, is there? Traffic and changing places as the leaders get on there, keep the rhythm high. The riders that get caught on the sides could be flipped into the grass banks.
Yep, these are the 3 leaders now, and they've slipped across that smoother section of road on the left there. But what's dangerous, you see, Phil, is when the road narrows in and you have to jump onto the cobblestones are so uneven. If you don't get that jump quite right, you can catch the wheel and the bike just gets taken from underneath you. This is a 4-star section of cobblestones at Quernin. It's the 21st section of cobblestones left to go down towards the finishing line. There you can see the front end of the main field coming in there as if it was a ghost, and they're just keeping themselves, I think, nice and compact at the front end. Nobody's too panicked at all about these section of cobblestones, and for George Hincapie, I have to say he's pretty lucky that they haven't gone over this section with real full speed, because otherwise he'd be put under pressure.
Well, once they're off that cobblestone onto the smoother road, the boys up front are pulled out 5 minutes and 34 seconds. So they pulled back 30 seconds of the lead, going the right way again. And that, I think, is the biggest gap they've had since they broke away there. The spectators waving bottles, and some are helpers, some aren't. Drive down the middle. There's always a skill to riding the cobbles, Paul. The boys seem to like the middle when they can see where they are.
Well, it's the best place to ride if you ride the middle section of the cobblestones, because you're less likely to have any impact punctures. You've got a chance to look at the front end of the main field. Looks very much like Stuart O'Grady riding at the front end of the main field. Look how he's got his hands in the middle of the handlebars. That allows you to not hold the bike too hard and allow the front end of the bike to steer itself. And that's the important thing to do, is to be fluid and relaxed in a situation like this, and not force the bike to take its own line.
There's one or two guys dancing precariously on those cobbles right now down that little descent. Our cameraman getting some low angle shots. This is the angle from the camera right now off that motorbike. They're as brave as the bike riders, these fellas, believe me. This is now sector 22 for the main peloton. The leaders are heading out to sector 21. 1,600 meters, a little bit tricky when you're in the peloton, much easier if you're on your own.
Well, again, you can see every one of these sections is causing a few problems. Again, this is Denis Flaut, the rider from Saunier Duval. He's still surviving at the back end of the main field, but I do know he's trying to come back from a little bit of injury. And you see how the main field opens up at the front end of it there. You can see the gaps starting to appear. Riders taking a few risks on the left and the right. I think once we get off this section of cobblestones, Phil, they'll start to get a little bit more nervous, because we're looking at around about 22 kilometers to go to the Forest of Arenberg.
A lot of guys today believe they're in with a chance here. There's no question of that. This is going to be a very open Paris-Roubaix. The first real hammer will fall on the heads of many of these riders when they get into the Forest of Arenberg. That is for sure. And that's not so far away right now. These are the leaders. They'll be on sector 21 as they continue their way, slightly increasing their lead to 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Well, the main field won't panic too much. They will know each one of these riders. They'll know their performances from the past. They'll know how strong they are, and they will have figured out that once they accelerate towards the end of this race, they'll feel confident they can pull these three leaders back into the fold. It's only once the big guns start to attack on these cobblestones do you realize how difficult they are, because the main riders like Tom Boone and Cancellara, Stuart O'Grady, and of course George Hincapie can wipe a minute off these riders' advantage in one section of cobblestones.
Oh yeah, again, it's the old story here in these races, like in Ghent-Wevelgem midweek, like the previous Sunday's Tour de Flanders. The big boys put the pressure on at the back. They're not necessarily chasing the leaders, they are simply attacking the course, and the momentum carries them up. There's another man who's one of the giants here of the region. They're dotted all over the place today. At least they get the best view above the spectators.
They certainly do. They come together for all the big kermesses, or the town fairs in the middle of this part of France. There you can see the big man there a little bit further back in the blue and yellow. That's Magnus Backstedt, a former winner. There's Stuart O'Grady right in the middle there with Team CSC written on his jersey. He's played a cunning game, I think, Phil, over the last couple of months. Let's not forget that Stuart O'Grady had a very nasty accident in the Tour de France last year. Not only did he get up to walk again, but actually to ride a bike and to race again. And I think over this last week, his condition has slowly been starting to come back to what it was 12 months ago.
He's done really well to get back up to the sharp end of the race so quickly after that problem he had recently, and he's back up there now. 115 kilometers here to the finishing line in Roubaix. Sector 20 for the leaders now as they head on to what is a section of 1.6 kilometers. I must say that the boys' elite Leif Hoster is up there for the Silence Lotto team. So the riders and Maggie will be really pleased with being up there just now.
He certainly will. He's got to ride at the front end of the main field. We're 20 kilometers away from the Forest of Arenberg, and these guys know that. They know it's a very impressive section of cobblestones, and it's not necessarily where you'll win Paris-Roubaix, but many riders in the past have lost all of their chances in that very incredible section of forest. It's around about 3 kilometers in length, but the cobblestones there have to be, I would say, probably the worst ones of the whole course.
Well, they've got them barriered to keep the crowd off the cobblestones. The crowd are being forced to stand in the trails of the forest. It's a section of the France, rather, which is not used by public transport of any form. No cars allowed in there. You can walk in there and enjoy the tranquility of the place on any other day except today, when they open it up to the vehicles of the race and, of course, the riders. Well, clouds are building. They've forecast here, by the way, that the rain will come during the afternoon, and just looking out across there, it looks as though it's getting a little bit stormy. But the temperature, although a little bit chilly to stand and observe, I would think these boys are quite warm just now.
See how dangerous it is here riding on the cobblestones, because as you're moving up the outside trying to keep yourself well in contact with the race, what happens is riders zigzag left and right looking for a smooth section of cobblestones, and they never look in their rear view mirror before they make that maneuver, and what will happen is you make contact, the next minute you're in the middle of a potato field.
All the support there for Milram's Nicky Terpstra. He's in the race today as the Boyd Telecom teams move up on the right. Still CSC riding well. You get some idea of how these riders literally fight the bikes to hold it upright on the broken road. And Matty Pronk is riding best of all in this breakaway. He is the strong man of it. Kikes and Serov aren't so happy on the cobbled roads.
I tell you what, this is a crazy race, but every one of the bike riders on the start line this morning wanted to ride this race. You have to want to ride this race if you're going to perform in it. It's a crazy race. It's like turning the clock back 100 years, because this is a race down towards the end where it really is survival of the fittest. It's a race of elimination.
Yes, and you've got to hold your own, and anything can happen at any moment in the peloton when you're on the cobbles, as it just has by the look of it here. Because this is an interesting situation that's developed here with the Case de Pan riders. They don't normally ride taking part anyway. Nicolas Portal is the rider getting back on his bike, and it is Jose Ivan Gutierrez, former time trial champion, might still be the time trial champion of Spain, helping him on his way.
Well, obviously Portal has been a rider given the chance to perform for his team this afternoon, and that order was given and discussed in the team meeting this morning. If Portal has a section of cobblestones where he has a mechanical, somebody has to help him. Somebody will ride close to him on all occasions to make sure that he's got a quick wheel change, because at this point in time the team cars and the mechanics are an awful long way back, up to as much as 5 minutes as the race unfolds, splits apart and then comes back together. But for Portal here, you can see he's using the advantage of the slipstream of the vehicle in front of him, and I can't blame him for this, because he's got nowhere else to go.
Yes, this is another difficult sector of the road now. The cars want to get out of the way, not so easy, but he's riding back very, very strongly here. He's a bit lucky he's found a nice little stretch of smooth road. Unfortunately, the car driver in the front not looking in his mirror, and he's blocked him clean off. He really needs to swing across to the right. It is a war between the riders and the drivers, but even the rival team car drivers would never dream of intentionally infringing a rival rider. That simply is not on in Paris-Roubaix. It's the law of the jungle, yes, but you don't ever go up against the rival riders in such a manner.
Stewie O'Grady sitting in the middle there with his dark glasses on. You can't understand what's going through his mind at the moment. I think today he's going to try and do something very special for Fabian Cancellara. Cancellara just the other day was in a press conference, and one of the Swiss journalists said to him, Phil, he said, well, you weren't 100% last week, were you, in the Tour of Flanders? And his retort, and I'll edit it for television purposes, was something along the lines of, well, you'd better get yourself a big raincoat, because it's going to be pretty windy when I blow by everybody on Sunday. So I think that's a man showing confidence.
I've got a feeling Cancellara will go really well today. We don't know about Stewart, but I have a secret feeling he's going to go well as well, because I think his form has been coming steadily right through these spring classics, and this is the one. No guy likes to wear number 1 and not put up a good ride, that's for sure. Entering now sector 20 here at 115 kilometers. The leaders have already gone through. Here come a very strung out peloton now. Sector 18 is when we go into the Arenberg forest.
Well, it's 20 kilometers to go for the main field now until the Arenberg forest. 115 kilometers to go from here. 95 kilometers to go when they get into the Arenberg forest. This is a section of cobblestones given a 3-star rating. The highest star rating is a 5-star rating, and this is 1.6 kilometers in length. It's almost like a motorway section of cobblestones, these, Phil. They're not too difficult at all, but what it does is it wears down the rider's nerves. It wears down the nervous energy that you have to get rid of to stay at the front end of the main field in a race like this. From now on to the finish, these guys have got to be alert all of the time. There's no resting, there's no sitting at the back end of the main field. You've got to be there and you've got to be on your game.
Well, we met some club cyclists over the weekend who went and rode the last 100 kilometres. That's basically all the cobbles. I said, let me look at your hands, and sure enough, there was the red blotches where the blisters had burst, because you have to grip the handlebars so tight here. And if your hands aren't roughened up, if you work in a white collar job, then you tend to get blisters all over the palms.
Just noticed riding at the front in about 6th or 7th position was Fabian Cancellara. Not too far behind him was big Magnus Backstedt. You recognize him because he's got the blue and yellow jersey on, champion of Sweden. And you can see a little bit raggedy at the back end of the main field as riders now are starting to find that the acceleration at the front on the cobblestones is really having an effect at the back end of the group.
I think Portal just came on the back there too as he got round the team cars. Switching back up to the leaders again. Still looking extremely clean and tidy for such a stage of Paris-Roubaix. Previous years, of course, the roads have been soaking wet. Last year it was like summer on the road to Roubaix rather than springtime. There was even spectators in shorts. It was such a beautiful day for watching the event. The purist, I think, likes to see a pretty cold, tough, dry, wet, windy day. So the riders come in as looking as though they spent 2 or 3 hours underground. 110 to go, 10 kilometres from the forest.
Well, there's a little sign there. And à Denain, les géants du Nord saluent les géants de la route, which basically means from the town of Denain, the giants of the north, which are those big statues we've seen at the side of the road, are greeting the giants of the road. And these are real giants here this afternoon, because these are some of the best bike riders in the world. And just looking down the list of favourites, the pre-race favourites, Phil, all of the top specialists of the cobblestones are here.
Well, just making a little bit of pace, making Wim de Vocht here on the front. And he starts to get the guys back into the action.
Johan van Sommeren in second place as well.
As
He's
always.
a fantastic bike rider. Doesn't win very many bike races at all in his career, but I tell you what, if you got a medal for the number of kilometres spent on the front end of a bike race, he would have a gold, silver and a bronze.
He was. In fact, he doesn't win any races, but he did have a great win in the Tour of Poland last year. And the whole team were delighted for him, because for once he was the man on the podium and not someone he'd helped put there, because he's a great team man. Well, next sector underway here now, and this ticks another one off. This should be 19, I think, as we head towards it, which will take us into Wallers and then on into Arenberg.
Yeah, these guys now must be wondering what they're doing at the front end of the bike race. They're still holding on to a pretty decent advantage. In fact, they've stretched it up to around about the 6-minute mark. But once the big guns start to fire and start to take this race a lot more seriously, you'll see that 6 minutes get wiped away. Now, a little bit of explanation there as to why you must ride at the front end of the main field, because you lose so much momentum at the back end of the group to slow down and go around those corners, and you've got to accelerate again. And you accelerate and decelerate so many times like that during the day that at the end of the day, it really does start to tire you out.
Nord-Pas-de-Calais, so it's a new department now, as the leaders head up towards that banner. All working together. As I say, I think that Matty Pronk is the strong man once we get to the cobblestones. Slightly uphill gradient here, 108 kilometres to go to the finish. Once we clear the forest of Arenberg, we'll be 98 kilometres from the finish, so we're very close now. Gap reversing again a little bit. Now, it was on the forest last year when the field started to rip away into shreds, and it was from those groups that formed at the front finally, but there was a few incidents along the way, of course, that Jude O'Grady came out the winner. CSC are well aware of what it means to see the forest first. 4 men on the front from Team CSC. That, for me, Paul, is a sign of great confidence. They've got a few cards, not just with Cancellara, not just with O'Grady, but also with Kurt Attel-Arvesen.
Yeah, they've got a very experienced squad, and you can see they've got 5 riders at the front of the race in the top 10 positions there. That's a point of honour for them to just show everybody that they're taking this race very seriously indeed. They now know that they've got the next section staring them in the face. That's the section from Haveluy to Wallers, and then they go to the Tranchée of Arenberg, which everybody knows is a scary proposition if you're a professional bike rider. And we mustn't forget that Team CSC are the team that have won this bike race, Phil, for the last 2 years.
That's absolutely right, with Cancellara and last year with O'Grady, and they know all about winning again this year as well, starting off with Milan-San Remo with Cancellara. These narrow roads now, they shut down on the riders. Already out Tour Hushoff, by the way, the leader of Crédit Agricole. This is Yannick Talbardon. who sat at the back there. Feels a bit like a headless team now with the loss of Thor Hushoft earlier on today.
There's Mark Renshaw as well, the sprinter from Team Crédit Agricole. He's riding a little bit too far to the back end of the main field, and again there's an example of these great giants of the north. They're dotted around, every town has one, and they term them out for the big town fairs whenever they come around this part of the north, and they enjoy a town fair. And normally in the past, whenever there was a fair in town, they would always have an associated bike race called a kermes.
Well, you wouldn't know all the hell of the north was around the riders right now. A perfect day for cycle race, beautiful smooth roads, lovely green fields. Temperature beginning to climb steadily. It's round about 14 degrees Celsius, so it's not exactly roasting. But just look at that long line at the back. These boys always under pressure. It's a matter of time before they unhitch.
Well, they're moving to the front there. Those guys are keeping themselves as close to the front as they can without getting too much involved in the wind. There's Tom Bonen on the left-hand side following his teammate. You can recognize him, Stijn de Volder, in the black, yellow and red jersey. He's the national champion of Belgium. And Team Quick-Step here this afternoon, they've got a point to prove, because for many, many years, either through the name of Team Mappé or Team Quick-Step, they have been the dominant team in Paris-Roubaix. Well, they lost the grip of it a little bit, Phil, over the last couple of years, and it's swung across to Team CSC.
And let's not forget the Domo squad as well. When Cervez Canavan won, Johan Museo got second, and Roman Veensteins was third. A 1-2-3 for the same setup.
Well, there's a nice little, you just managed to see there, stuck onto that rider's top tube there. That was an explanation to him of exactly where every section of cobblestones was. And he will now know that the next one that he'll be looking at is cobbled section number 19, and that's the cobbled section of Wallers, and that's just in the outskirts of the town of Denain, which is a very tough mining town in the north of France.
And there was a certain rider not far from me, once a rider, who won that race, the Grand Prix Denain.
Well, you must have a very long memory to remember that one.
No, I had to dig it out. It was hard work.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Now, interesting to watch the team tactics here, but this is the patching job being done at the back here. And Cofidis, who's having a very good season, especially with Nick Noyens, and there he is, 101. He's just stolen that rider's bottle. That's not very polite.
Well, it's okay. It's one of his teammates, so I think it was maybe a preordained plan. The rider who he took the bottle from, by the way, his dad won Paris-Roubaix on 2 occasions. That was Hervé Duclos-Lassalle.
1992, 1993 was Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle was here today to watch his son. I saw him in the celebration area and the pre-team presentation yesterday, and Hervé riding it today.
See everybody getting nervous now, Phil. They know the next 2 sections are going to be scary sections. There's number 1 just on the left-hand side there with CSC on his jersey. That's Stuart O'Grady, last year's winner. The gap has come down to 5 minutes and 11 seconds. There's Julian Dean in the black and white jersey there, a jersey which for the first time I've seen this year. That's the jersey of the national champion of New Zealand. He rides for the American squad, Team Slipstream Chipotle.
Lots of chances for all of these riders at the moment. This has been under... Oh, I thought they were slowing down then. It must have been a trick of the camera. I thought we had a problem at the front of the bunch. Here we go under that banner now, welcoming us into Nord-Pas-de-Calais, as the peloton happy to head towards the forest as a pretty much a big bunch here. A little attack by Milram as they try to see the pot forest ahead of everybody else. But I think an unusual pattern today, Paul. They kept the race together. They chased every small breakaway from the start, and it wasn't until 92 kilometers had been covered when the 3 leaders finally got away.
I think everybody very wary because of the fact that we've got a very strong tailwind this morning, and giving a breakaway a large advantage when there is a tailwind like that gives them the possibility of success, and nobody wants a strange result in Paris-Roubaix. There have been 1 or 2 successes in the past when the breakaway has gone clear very early on. That's how Dirk de Mol got himself a victory in this race. The break went early on and was never seen again. And I think for that reason everybody was a little bit nervous with that tailwind and the threat, of course, of rain, which they say is going to happen in the latter part of the afternoon. But still, the clouds look a bit too high in the sky here for me, and I think we may well see a dry Paris-Roubaix for the professional bike riders.
It looks like it's so far, but you never know. Filippo Pizzato on the far side. People saying he's too light to ride the cobblestones to win this race. Well, he might have other ideas, of course. He's here, and he wouldn't come if he wasn't feeling he had a chance of victory.
Just trying to see if we can get a quick sketch on his bike there, because apparently there's a crash.
Oh, it's a massive crash here. And this is going to happen all of the time, but let's see the riders who are down at the moment. A Team High Road boy has gone off the back. Captured in front is Christian Moreau of Lamprey.
I tell you, I could hear that crash happening before we actually saw it. You hear the squeal of the tyres and the squeal of the brakes, and then all of a sudden you get a massive number of bike riders going down like that. We were looking at Pipo Pozzato here on the right-hand side, and he saw the crash. Do you see? He was agile enough to flick across, and fortunately for him, there was a gap in that central island there, and he completely and utterly missed that crash.
Well, the high road guy who went down was Bernard Eisel, just off to the left of our picture there. He's a sprinter on George Hincapie's team, but no sign of any of the big names being caught up there. But you never know, and these are on smooth roads. This really does catch out the unready, because people don't expect to fall on these roads.
Everybody's getting nervous though, because they know we're looking at probably 15 kilometers to the forest of Arenberg, the famous tranchée of Arenberg, which goes back to the Napoleonic times. It's a scary little forest, and not far away from where the bike riders charge through. There are actually wild boar. Team High Road now have got themselves to the front, and they're organised. Again, Team High Road, I have to say, that's George Hincapie in 5th place.
Keeping steady.
Calm down, don't take it too high up for the moment. We've got 15 kilometers, 10 miles still to go to the forest of Arenberg, but you can see the damage they're doing as the leaders now head into section number 19 to go, and this is the section of Haveluy to Wallers. They're onto it nice and safely. Once they come out of this section, Phil, they've got another 10 kilometers to go to the forest of Arenberg. But this is a hard section. It's a 4-star section, 2.5 kilometers in length. Fairly smooth cobblestones, but slightly uphill, a false flat, and the most difficult thing here will be the wind that's starting to buffet, because we're getting into the part of the race now where the race actually zigzags around the northern part of France to find these old historic cobblestone roads.
That's right, and the majority of these roads now are protected by law. They can't improve them, and if they do repair them, they've got to put cobblestones back, and that's because they want to preserve what is really one of the oldest classics in the world. It runs a little bit, not quite as old as Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but even so, it goes into the late 1800s, and this is edition number 106. There was a break, of course, as there was everywhere in this region for the World Wars. But these three riders now just concentrating. That's the way to see, I suspect. But this could be the problem of the day, the railroad crossings and riders being forced to stop, because a couple of years ago the judges disqualified 3 riders. Now, are they stopping the train on this occasion?
Can we say thank you very much to the SNCF, the Society of the Chemin de Fer in the northern part of France, because they've actually stopped the train for the bike race to go by.
Well, that's terrific, because that would have given the leaders probably another 30 seconds to a minute advantage. Obviously, you can't stop the riders who have gone over the crossing. But that's good. The international rules say the riders must stop, but by grace of the SNCF, it's onward we go.
Well, I'm not sure what they'll do with the section where they come near to the finish. There's a very nasty railway crossing. And in fact, that's an international railway crossing for the trains taking freight up to Belgium, and they may well not want to stop. So you've got to hope that you're in the right position when you get to there. Look at the time gap. We've been chatting away here, and the time gap has now come down inside of the 5-minute margin. And you can see the organisation of teams banding together to make sure that they can get their leaders into an ideal position into the cobblestones. Here we are at section number 19 to go. This is the cobblestone section of Wallers. And it's going to be a little bit more precarious when a group of about 120 riders try and take that corner. And look at the wind.
Yeah.
That's making it very difficult.
Right across the race, but it doesn't really matter which direction the wind is today, because we change direction so quickly. They're going to get headwind, tailwind and crosswind all on the road to Roubaix. The reason that break is coming down is the riders at the head of the peloton are dicing with death here, jumping up the pavements, are riding as quickly as they can to stop other riders joining them at the front, and by consequence they're catching the leaders. And the FDJ rider there almost came down, but he managed to jump across and stay on position.
Well, a lot of the FDJ riders, Français de Jeux riders, they do a lot of cyclocross, which is a different discipline of the sport in the winter time. So they've learned how to make these bunny hops and how to get themselves in and out of difficult situations like this. You can see now the nervousness. Look at the riders on the left and the right-hand side of the road. They're taking risks to get themselves to the front, because they want to start this section of cobblestones probably in the top 10 or 15 places. They're starting to feel the tension moving up. Looks like Robbie Hunter over on the left-hand side for Team Barlow World.
Well, South Africa would love to see a result from Robbie Hunter. He is a rider that gave them a brilliant Tour de France, finishing second in the green jersey competition and winning a stage. Barlow World, as a consequence, are back in the Tour de France this year. And now Hunter is here. Got a big cheer yesterday when he was introduced to the crowd along with the Barlow World team.
3 leaders now. This is almost a race within a race. They're racing to survive. They're racing to get themselves to the Forest of Arenberg ahead of everybody else. And Arenberg is not the end of the bike race. Arenberg is still 18 sections of cobblestones to go down towards the finish, and then some very famous cobblestone sections come almost immediately afterwards. The one of LM again. Another crash at the back end of the main field, and the man who's gone down there rather hard is Martin Elminger, a former winner of the Tour Down Under.
Oh, clipped the corner there, clipped the stones, but it looks as though he's up and running. Winner of the Tour Down Under in Australia last year. Excuse me. And just seeing now if well, as they shoot on to their sector 19 now, the leaders must just be about at the end of it, and they're bound now for the tranchée of Arenberg. We are now looking at sector 19 of Paris-Roubaix here, 103.5 kilometers to go. We are just one sector of pavé away from entrance into the tranchée of Arenberg. 3 riders are in the lead, and they are Matti Prong, Jan Kuyt, Alexander Serov. Last time check was coming down. They were just over 4 minutes. We've just seen Martin Elminger tumble. And I can tell you what, Paul, the big name that's gone out is Thor Hushoff, abandoned already with a crash even before we came on air.
Well, the race is going to start to get very tough now. Look at the wind there, battling across the cobblestone sections. That's why you can see Fabian Cancellara and his men are riding over on the left-hand side. That's so as nobody can take advantage of any of their slipstream at all. This is the first time I think the main field has started to take a serious interest, Phil, in putting the pressure on the front end of this race, because they know the next section of cobblestones is going to be the Forest of Arenberg. This is section number 19. And we count down from 19 now to 1 at the end. Number 1 is just outside the velodrome here. It's a little bit ornamental, but I tell you what, this is serious racing.
Yes, and they're all based on star ratings, by the way. 1 is anybody can ride. 5 is you takes your chance. They are the hardest stretches. And we are heading towards the tranchée of Arenberg now, sector 18. Just look at the wind blowing across Flanders today. This is French Flanders, though. Those are the Belgian flags of Flanders. The rider's about to make a change of direction, at least I hope so, as they swing to their right. And a huge peloton here. It's been a very strange race pattern today. We've seen a lot of riders try just to hold position. Those flags now become a little bit of a tailwind as they accelerate, which makes it even harder for these poor guys at the back of a very, very long line of riders. And Yuri Kripsov is the rider here at the back at the moment.
Well, you can see these guys are looking a little bit ragged at the back end of the main field. They're trying just to stay in contact because the big guns now are starting to fire. You know, the weather forecast this morning had predicted rain, but it doesn't look to me as if that's going to happen.
I don't know, they're beginning to look a little bit stormy over the backs of the riders. We haven't seen any rain. There was a few spots very early on. They went away. And the breakaway didn't establish till 92 kilometers after leaving Compiègne, which was a long way. Normally they go away very quickly here. As we now continue to pick up the riders from Team CSE. Marcus Lundqvist is the rider on the left of our picture. Number 1, Stuart O'Grady, who won it last year. He's been behind the race, but he's back up there now. Number 4 is Matti Breschel, and right behind Breschel is Fabian Cancellara. The strong men are steering the ship over this stretch of cobblestones.
There's Maggie Baxter as well in the blue and yellow. He's riding right at the front for Team Slipstream Chipotle. He's in fine form here. I think he too, Phil, despite having broken his collarbone in the Tour of Qatar in one of the first races of the year, he's got himself back to form for a race that he loves. And I have to say, to win this race, you have to have a certain affection for this race because it is really a little bit mad. There's another
huge crash there as the rider's gone down from AG2R. I think it was Kripsov who was right at the back here. And the rider there from Chipotle is Friscorn, Will Friscorn, I think it is.
Yep, he's a great climber, and I wonder if he's getting his baptism of fire here in Paris-Roubaix this afternoon, because this is fire at the front. This is the #1 team in the world. The main sponsor, Team CSC, will disappear from the sport at the end of this season, and what a way to go out. This is what it's like at the back end. That's Kritsov, as you said, has gone down.
Yeah.
Very hard indeed.
It is such a bizarre race, this. It's like a horse race. I've said it before, but you hit a fence, you fall, the rest just keep going. You never know when Lady Luck turns against you.
Right, off that section, that was 19 sections of cobblestones to go, and now, Phil, they've got themselves around about 8 kilometres to go to the Forest of Arenberg.
Right, so they're away now from sector 19, and the 3 riders are still just about 4 1/4 minutes in front. As we look down here, sorry Paul, from the helicopter, good move by Team CSC, but you know they're confident to get 4 men up here.
Well, one thing they want to do, you see, they want to put a lot of pressure onto the main field now and get themselves safely into the Forest of Arenberg. Big Tom Bonen is there. He was just over to the left-hand side, riding nice and comfortably near the front. Maggie Baxter in the blue and yellow. George Hincapie coming forward there over on the right-hand side. He loves this bike race. He's been so close to winning it. In fact, strangely enough, a couple of years ago, it was his former teammate who stopped him from winning this bike race. Tom Bonen beat George Hincapie into 2nd place.
Lovely images here of CSC with Lundqvist setting the pace, Stuart O'Grady just behind. Rabobank are trying to get back on form here too in those orange jerseys. They've got a great fillip by Oscar Freire, becoming the first Spanish rider to win Gent-Wevelgem in the week. And he's the first, he's on Team Rabobank as well.
Juan Antonio Fletcher there as the 2nd rider in the orange jersey there. He's hoping to become the first Spaniard ever to win Paris-Roubaix. But look at the pressure, Phil, here that Team CSC have put on the front end of this field. They've actually split the field. There's the Belgian national champion at the back there in the black, yellow and red jersey. But this is because of the pressure that's been put on the front there by Team CSC. Silence Lotto over on the right-hand side in the black and red jersey. That must indicate Leif Hoster's not too far away.
Just look how this race has split under the tempo riding here of CSC, ripping the legs off on sector 19 as we head for 18. Little bit of arm waving from Leif Hoster here. Mr. Gendarme who's warning of the island there. The peloton now at 3:53. We're inside 4 minutes. We're bound for the Forest. 96.8 kilometres to go. That is, of course, for the leaders who must be almost in the Forest.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're now in the town of Arenberg for the leaders, and these riders are not too far behind at 3 minutes and 53 seconds. They're probably looking at a distance of 2.5 kilometres behind those 3 leaders, but it really is fire alarms on board the main field here. They know what's coming up next. They've all been and had a look at the Forest of Arenberg. They know the history of this place. They know how important it is to get into the Forest of Arenberg in the front 5 or 10 places. It's a battle right now. It is a war of attrition to just make sure that you can get your leader into an ideal position, to make sure that then it's up to him to try and get through the Forest of Arenberg without any incident.
Well, Stein de Volder, Tom Bonen, Stuart O'Grady, Fabian Cancellara, Leif Hoster, they're right up at the sharp end. Magnus Bagstead off to the right. These are likely favourites today. As we now see a dead straight road heading for the Forest. It's up there. There's an old railway bridge as we cross a railway line, and then we are in the nasty stretch of cobblestones which really do rock those bones.
They will rock every bone in your body there as we look across the old lifting gear from the mine. In fact, there's a mine right underneath the Forest of Arenberg, which Jean Sabinski claims he was the only person to have worked underneath the Forest of Arenberg and raced over the top of it. Here we are, about 500 metres to go there. You can see halfway down the bridge over the top for the railway crossing. But now this is going to be an easy entrance for the 3 leaders behind Phil when the main field come here in about 3 minutes' time. It's going to be absolute and utter chaos. These guys, I would expect, are going to lose between 1 and 1.5 minutes of their advantage in the next 3 kilometres.
These are the 3 leaders in Paris-Roubaix now as they head into the Forest at sector 18 of 28 sectors, counting down to 1. Jean Stablansky there. Yes, the miner, sadly, he's recently died, who's worked under this road and also in the mine that was, and raced over the top in Paris-Roubaix. He was a world champion. He was always very proud to tell us that when every day we came here on the day before Paris-Roubaix. 95.5 kilometres. The 3 leaders are Matti Pronk, Jan Kijks, Alexander Serov, and they're getting into the forest around about 3 1/4 minutes ahead of the field, which is being led by Stuart O'Grady's CSC team.
Well, there you can see, Phil, that's what the Forest of Arenberg is all about. The main field will charge into this section at around about 60 kilometers an hour. There will be bottles, there'll be bodies flying all over the place, and every bike rider in the world just trying to stay upright for as long as possible. Once you slow down, though, once you lose your impetus, and as we look here at the back here for Serov, the rider from Team Tinkoff, the bike bounces over. This is the battle at the front.
This is in the town of Wallows before we get into the situation, and this has been happening all of the time. And down now, we're looking at another pile up here now. It's just happened. Arnold Coyot of Case Depart is the rider off to the right. 1 or 2 riders, and this is Coyot here. And Pozzato is also a faller this time. He missed out on the last fall, which is about 5 kilometers ago. They caught him this time around. And this, Paul, is amazing. It's just before they've gone into the forest.
Well, the forest is such an important moment for anybody here. There's a rider on the left-hand side there from Team Rabobank. He's passed a wheel across. I wonder if that was Juan Antonio Fletcher, and it was Juan Antonio Fletcher, so he has had to get a spare wheel from a teammate. He's got a battle now to get himself into contact, because to me, as I've always said, Phil, people wonder why I talk about the Forest of Arenberg all the time. It's in the Forest of Arenberg that you can lose this bike race, and Juan Antonio Fletcher this morning dreamed of being the first Spaniard to win it. Now he may well be losing it.
Second last year, and the only other Spanish rider to make second was Poble back in 1958. No Spanish riders ever won it. He's been joined by the winner of the 3 days of Depana here not long ago, Postuma, to give him a leg up, hopefully. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, there's trouble, because this is Serov finally unhitching, and I bet all the work being done by Mate Pronk.
Well spotted there, the white jersey, Mate Pronk, Team Kolstrop on the front there. These guys are having the advantage of only being 3 on the entrance into the cobblestone section of Arenberg here, and so they can ride themselves comfortably on the path over on the left-hand side. 5-star rating now, the Roubaix d'Arenberg, the Forest of Arenberg, and the main field and the main contenders are on their way in for a taste of 2.4 kilometers of some of the worst cobbles in the world.
This is an amazing bike race. There's nothing else like it in the world of sport. We are now in that long, straight, horrible 2.5 kilometers of the forest. The crowd are orderly. That's because we buried them up this year, so they can't crowd onto the racecourse. This is the charge now of the strongest riders in the race. Right up at the front is Stuart O'Grady, who wears number 1. Alongside him is mate and another likely winner in Fabian Cancellara. Matti Breschel is there. They're all Team CSC. For the moment, they're unaware of those fallers behind them. You see the guy holding the wheels, Paul, just in case somebody has bad luck.
Well, the teams will all put 2 or 3 different mechanical pits through this section of cobblestones, Phil. This is chaos at the back. These guys now have just got to survive their Paris-Roubaix.
This is Fletcher trying to get back.
He's a long way back there. He's lost himself a minute on the entrance into the Forest of Arenberg, and possibly any chance at all today. Look at the damage this section does. There's Tom Bonen over on the left-hand side. He's riding this race sensibly. In the middle there, you can see the champion of Belgium. He's Stijn de Volder, the winner last week of the Ronde van Vlaanderen.
Well, even the police motorcyclists are standing up. It's a bit painful to sit down in the Forest of Arenberg, and they ride specially adapted motorcycles which are normally used for motocross to guide these riders safely. The danger, the ever-present danger, drinking bottles dropping off those bikes can cause terrible crashes. There's another one gone.
Well, this is how dangerous the section is, and look at the damage it's doing. Riders losing their impetus, losing their momentum, and looking for a smoother part of the road to ride on. But unfortunately, that little track down towards the side there, Phil, is very soft and will slow these riders down. Good move here by Team Liquigas, big acceleration. And you can see these guys have got to be unbelievable on their bikes to be able to handle their machines over situations like this.
Well, look at them dive for anything now. Mud's better than concrete just at the moment as they head for the inside. No sooner are they there, they've got to rejoin the hard road because it gets a little bit deep and slippery. One brave man going straight on anyway, as this is Pozzato now, still trying to pick his way round riders who have fallen off the pace. He fell off his bike. He's just past Postuma, who must have just helped Fletcher into the group and dropped back.
He paced Juan Antonio Fletcher for as long as he could to try and keep him in contact there. That's Cancellara on the front there, followed there by Tom Bonen. All the big names moving them up. There's Robbie Hunter just at the back there as well for Team Barlow World. Look at that, all over on the right-hand side. These guys are just trying to survive the Forest of Arenberg. Big Maggie in the middle.
I've got to laugh because here are guys, the top professionals in the world, have all taken to the grass and they're riding a road race, all because that we're looking at the toughest stretch of the road. Pozzato, a brilliant road racing cyclist, won stages of the Tour de France. He's now just keeping his eye on that group in front, and he's going to try and reach them and pray he doesn't get more trouble. Off to the right is Fletcher, picking his way through better riders and trying to get back up there. He knows you've got to get back to the leaders because you never know when something happens again.
And that's Pozzato just behind him. He will not give up at all there. I wouldn't want to be the photo cameraman at the side of the road there, number 13, because that could be unlucky for some. But for Pozzato and Juan Antonio Fletcher, that's been very unlucky here this afternoon.
Well, I'll tell you what, number 13 is actually Graham Watson today, who's just about the world's best photographer, and he's a Brit. And he is now getting some great shots, which we'll probably see on his calendar by the end of the year. The Spanish Basque flags are flying here, the Breton flag, where the Tour de France starts in the midsummer in July, as they continue now to drive off the cobbles.
You would have expected that to be Leif Hoster, but in fact that was Johan van Sommeren, the incredible domestique for Team Silence Lotto, pacing Tom Boonen. Tom Boonen, numero uno for the Frietjes.
Number one for the chips. It's bizarre. This is an incredible race. We knew this would be a classic, and this is going to be a great classic. The riders are going to continue, then counter the situation, see who's around them, see who they can rely on now, and then try and catch up with the leaders. And just for the moment, we don't know who the leaders are, let's be honest, except Matty Pronk and Jan Kuyk somewhere are up front off the cobblestone sector.
Pipo Pozzato still trying to ride himself back into this bike race, and there will be no respite at all, Phil, because once they get off this section of cobblestones, the Forest of Arenberg, you've only got 4 kilometres, then the race throws another section of cobblestones at you, and that is the section of Wallers to Elem, and that is a pretty nasty long section as well.
Well, still trying to get on terms here is Fabio Sabatini, another Italian, trying to ride fourth with Pozzato.
George Hincapie. There you can see him just on the far side.
Yes, this is the lead group now, and well, the lead group, but not the leaders. George Hincapie is in this group in a white jersey. We'll just see if we can take stock very shortly. We've got one rider from Slipstream who's actually made this group, Paul.
Well, just getting onto the back there, that is Martin Mascan. He was the rider who finished 12th in the Ronde van Vlaanderen last week. So that was an impressive performance by him.
He is a superb bike rider. It's his first year as a pro, but he is a great cyclist, and he's up there.
There you can see Baden Cook as well for Team Barlow World. There's the front runners there over on the right-hand side there, and it's a small group of riders trying to pull themselves back in here on this 4-kilometre section of decent road before you make the right-hand turn onto the nasty section of the next cobblestone road, which is Wallers.
Just take a look at that, the long road to Roubaix, and it's going to get a lot longer and harder yet. Just looking now, Pozzato trying to repair the damage with Sabatini as he tries to get back into the action. This is when you prove your class as a bike rider. This is when the pure talent will out, when you've got to recover from problems.
You mustn't give up there. You can see the problems there. He's got a big cut on his arm, but he wants to ride himself back into this race. Team High Road have got a lot of riders. There's Roger Hammond over on the left-hand side. Big George Hincapie's in the group. Looking nice and comfortable. There's Tom Boonen.
O'Grady just here, the big man himself, slipping down for the moment. O'Grady, I've just got that feeling Stewart's got it in his legs today. Roger Hammond is a man of this race. Best ever finisher along with Barry Hoban. He finished third when Magnus Bagstedt won it. Cancellara is here. The big boys using their strength have avoided the problem so far.
The rooms going up there for Team Silence Lotto. I'm looking to see. There's Leif Hoster. He's in the group as well. There's not very many big names have missed out here. I have to say the two unluckiest riders are Juan Antonio Fletcher and Pipo Pozzato.
Just look at the faces of these guys now as they grimace and hold on. They know they've got to hold on and wait for the next bone shaker, which will come at Sector 17 with 170 kilometres covered.
Christophe Mangin, former French national cyclocross champion, and the oldest man in the race at 40 years of age.
Heavens.
In his 18th year as a professional bike rider, Fabio Baldato.
He should be ashamed of himself. That's an incredible situation for him, to find the legs to stay up with these guys, some of them 17 years younger than him.
Well, I noticed in there as well Baden Cook, the rider from the team Barlow World. He's riding on fine form here. He'll be happy to ride well here in Paris-Roubaix. They're all slowing down a fraction. That really, you get an indication there, Phil, of what kind of selection the Forest of Arenberg created. 100 and something riders went into the Forest of Arenberg. 20 came out.
20 came out. And some on the backsides today. We're back with Pozzato here, who's just riding along there with Peter van Spraybroek, a Belgian rider on Top Sport. And this rider here for the Française de Jeu team, that looks as though it's Gerard, Aaron Gerard. Very good rider on form for the Classics just now.
It's going to be tough for Pippo Pozzato to get himself into this bike race once again, but at least alongside him there, he's got in this group Juan Antonio Fletcher. Fletcher is the kind of man who will battle. He will not give up at all. He'll try and get himself into this race. There he is on the far side. Had the hopes of the nation of Spain on his shoulders at the start of the day. He rode superbly last week. He looks cool, but he's lost himself a good 2 minutes, and that's a big ask to pull back into a race.
It is a big ask, but he's got to stay cool here. He's got the ability, and he's got to just watch and wait. But he knows that the luck that befell him in the Forest could befall anybody up front at any moment. There are a lot more bad stretches. There's the state of Paulo Felipe Pozzato here. No time to change the shorts, get on with the job. And I would think by now that the road rash is beginning to sting just a little bit.
Just looking down at his bike, he's wondering whether he's got a mechanical incident as well. And if that's the case, that will probably put him out of Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon. It all looks fairly normal for me. We're about to get ourselves onto the next section of cobblestones. And there is the start, Phil, of section number 17 to go. And that's the cobblestones of Wallers to Elem. And halfway through, they've got the Pont Gibus.
About 25 riders just finishing. The champion of France, by the way, has just crossed the finishing line in the junior version of Paris-Roubaix. Just a young lad, just outsprinted a rider from Denmark. We are now entering 87.6 kilometers to go here. The gap is only a minute 24 to those three leaders, which I think have split up, but our cameras have not gone back up to the leaders. We are looking here now at a leading group of some 25 riders as we hit sector 17 now. 89 kill. This is a four-star sector. Bad enough for the riders now, but Stuart O'Grady, the defending champion, number 2 on our picture.
Just sitting there on the left-hand side, O'Grady looking very comfortable and looking very confident. Behind him, Fabian Cancellara, the winner of 2 years ago. Team CSC have dominated this race over the last 2 seasons. They're going to hope to try and make it 3 years in a row if they can. But in this group, they've got a lot of other big favourites as well. This is the Pont Gibus they're going through there. An old railway bridge that has been taken down, but it's called the Pont Gibus in dedication to Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, the Frenchman, who, as you said, won this race 2 times in 1992 and 1993.
And time moves on. His son is riding it today, Hervé. Now he knows how good Dad really was, because he's not up in this leading group. The group itself riding the cobblestones here. Well, as far as we know, and we have to go where our cameras go, and our cameras go where they don't fall off their motorbikes. And right now, George Hincapie of the USA, who's never won this race but come so close, is in the lead chase group. We're not too worried about the breakaway because they are splitting up. Also up here is Baden Cook of Australia and Barlow World. And we also know that Stuart O'Grady, who wears number 1, is here as well. And Paul thinks he might have seen Robbie Hunter, but we want confirmation of that for South Africa.
I've definitely seen Baden Cook in there for Australia, for Team Barlow World. He was looking very comfortable. He got in there with the little split off the back, and he rejoined that leading group of riders. Now this is the arrière de la course, and this is the back end of the main field.
Yeah, and these are the boys who would just like to get up there right now. It's a question of just hang on in here. This is a nasty stretch of cobblestones at 1,600 meters of them, 4 stars out of 5 possibilities. The leaders have got themselves back together as we refine them here now. They are running at about 2 minutes ahead of the field, waiting for the check. But these are the 3 leaders: Matti Pronk, Jan Kijks, Alexander Serov. And again, it's Pronk at the front. He's done an incredible amount of work.
Well, you might have noticed just going into the Forest of Arenberg, these guys had around about a 3-minute advantage over the front end of the main field. Well, that advantage right now has been completely halved. They're at 1 minute 30 seconds ahead of a group that contains nearly all of the pre-race favourites. Big Magnus Backstead was in there for Team Slipstream Chipotle, as well as all the other guys that we've mentioned. But that's why this race is so difficult to cover, Phil. It's a very complicated race.
Well, a little bit of food being passed up there. He'll probably receive a fine for that. So Slipstream Chipotle have had a good race so far in their first battle of the cobblestones for this new American team who are aiming for a big ride here. Let's not forget that these are the organisers who organised Paris-Roubaix, who put on the Tour de France, and they've given Slipstream Chipotle a wild card entry. They've got a couple of riders up here, and I think Martin Mascant, he is a young Dutchman now getting his first chance at a pro race, and I'll tell you, this kid has huge talent.
Yes, he's got huge talent. To finish 12th in the Ronde van Vlaanderen at your very first attempt just gives you an indication of how good he's going to be once he starts to mature. We're now chasing our way through the back end of the group. All of the riders have been dropped, and we're looking, I think, for two riders. The man in the lime green there, Pippo Pozzato, and Juan Antonio Fletcher.
There he is. There's Fletcher.
They have ridden so hard over those cobblestones. They've ridden away from all of the other guys who were with them, and what they're trying to do now, they're looking up the road, Phil, looking to see if they can see the team cars, and then they'll know we can pull ourselves back into this race.
So Pippo Pozzato and Juan Antonio Fletcher, are they the first two big favourites to feel the axe fall today? Because it looks to me as though they may not rejoin the leaders, but George Hincapie's still there. Just look at Pozzato here, Paul. You've got a feel for him.
Yeah, he's got a mechanical problem as well there. He's getting his hand up there, looking for the team car to come forward. I've got to tell you, Pippo, in a race like this, you're going to have to wait an awful long time for the team car to come forward. I wonder what kind of mechanical he had. He did go down very hard indeed. It's a chaotic bike race. There's another group just in front of these riders, but that's not the group they're chasing after, because the group they're chasing after is the big group at the front end of the main field. At Peloton, that's where they want to be. They want to get themselves back to this group, because this is where the big names of the sport are for today.
And they are driving. They know what they've got here now. So often the first crossing of the Forest of Arenberg is a first move that splits up the field. We're looking from the helicopter here. 25 to 30 riders have got themselves together. They're running at 52 seconds behind the three leaders, and Pozzato is just on a minute behind the peloton. So there's still a chance, because he might well be clawing his way back.
Well, if this group at all slows down a fraction, that will give Pippo Pozzato and Juan Antonio Fletcher a chance to ride themselves back into this group. There's Leif Hoster just at the back of the group, wearing number 31. He's the leader of Team Silence Lotto. Johan van Sommeren, his teammate, just in front of him. He really is a phenomenal bike rider, van Sommeren. If you had half of the power that that man has got, you would be a very top professional bike rider.
I see he's not wearing a number, Stein de Volden, and it used to be a rule that the champion needn't ride with a number on, and I'm wondering if it still applies here in Belgium. He's got no number anyway.
I think he's got a long jersey over the top of that. Stefan Weseman was in this group, and that's nice to see. He rides for one of the smaller teams, Cycles Koolstrop. He did tell me yesterday that he was absolutely, definitely, Phil, going to retire this year, but he said that for the last couple of seasons.
Yes, well, cyclists, even though they're being battered to pieces in a race like Paris-Roubaix, they simply, within minutes of finishing, want to do it all again. It's something which is in the blood, and it is very difficult to hang up your wheels finally. But this group, Paul, 25 to 30 riders strong, and CSC are back on front. They caused the last problems. They're reforming in the front here again now. It is Lundqvist who's doing a lot of driving for CSC. He's the workhorse, the man they'll throw away as they race towards the finish in Roubaix, and hope they can replace him with Stuart O'Grady or Fabian Cancellara.
They have to be very confident at a stage like this to put all of your cards on the table, because we're still looking at a good 2 hours of racing before we actually get down to the finish line. Yep. And if you use all of your ammunition up early on with 80 kilometers to go, what's going to get thrown at you in the last 15 or 20 kilometers? That's, I think, what they need to think about. They're actually looking for a little bit of assistance there. You might have just noticed that little hand movement there across to the quick step rider, which was basically to say, come on, let's work together. We've got ourselves now a good working group. Let's keep it down like this in a few numbers.
Well, the boys from CSC have decided to impress upon Quick-Step. They need to help us because they carry two likely winners as well. Tom Bonen and, of course, Stein de Volder. There's a lot of riders beginning to follow, but the white fluffy clouds are coming back, so that's good for the race. Sun is on their left shoulder just now. There's Hoster deciding he's left his lunch in the changing rooms.
Yeah, we're wondering whether or not he's going to have a picnic lunch here this afternoon. He'll also probably be having a quick look at the train timetables, because a couple of years ago he actually finished second on this velodrome, but then was ejected from the race by the race referees because he refused the international rule that says if the railway crossings have come down, you have to stop. And I felt a little bit sorry for him on that occasion. You know,
well,
sometimes
absolutely.
you wonder whether or not the referees were actually athletes themselves.
Yeah,
and most of them weren't.
Most of them weren't, but we mustn't be against the referees. I'm one, don't forget. Well, I was anyway. Anyway, we're looking here at the leaders here. 3 of them together. They've regrouped. There's clearly Serov, who's a Russian rider who's not like riding the cobblestones. There must be cobbled roads in Russia, surely. But he really has lost ground every time the leaders have hit the cobblestones. But he's now quite prepared to work for his Tinkoff team at the front. They've still got a gap here. And remember that it's not the race coming up to them, it's about 25 riders. If they can just find the legs to slip into that group, they're going forward, and there might be a big result yet for them.
Well, that's a big sign there from the north of France. This is the small town of Ornain, one of the former big coal generating units to make electricity in this part of the world. It really is a tough part of the world here, and I think that's why they appreciate this bike race going through their territory, because Paris-Roubaix is a very tough bike race. And there you can see that group, which has nearly all of the main contenders in, and they're not very much more than about 40 seconds now, Phil, behind the 3 leaders.
Well, Team High Road, who are in this race, remember Team High Road is now a full American team as well, registered in California, in San Luis Obispo. They've won 22 races already this season. I'm counting also their women's team as well. They've just picked up their 2nd World Cup race yesterday, and so they're on good form. Team High Road, they're on a high, and they'll be looking for a result today with George Hincapie, who's right in there, 4th man down, 2nd white jersey.
Well, Hincapie is a man who really knows this bike race. He's got a lot of experience in the squad with him as well, because Roger Hammond has finished on the podium here before, and so too has Servais Carnavon. Tête de la course, those are the 3 leaders. They're now coming into section number 16. 3.7 kilometers long. Only a 3-star rating though, because the cobblestones here feel actually apparently rather smooth.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear, Paul, as they come over a railroad crossing, and then if they get across, they'll breathe a sigh of relief, because that's another train that can stop somebody else today. Here comes the lead peloton, just on a minute behind the front 3 riders. We've lost the whereabouts of Pozzato and Fletcher for the moment, and it's Team High Road first onto the cobblestones. This has been George Hincapie's great moments for years now in Paris-Roubaix, and it looks as though he's not going to let us down again this year, Paul.
No, George Hincapie loves this bike race. He's been motivated for it for many, many years. Back end of the group there is Stein de Volder. He's probably just keeping a close note on affairs. The winner last weekend of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, but here you can see High Road keeping the pressure on. Hincapie riding at the front, sitting high on his machine, turning over his pedals nice and smoothly. A little bit further back, the Armada there behind him of Team CSC. Fabian Cancellara in 5th place, the winner 2 years ago.
I'm just checking out the riders who are up here now. Bernard Eisel was up here for High Road, but he had that problem. We've got Roger Hammond up here. Andreas Clear is still here. George Hincapie, so they've got some good guns still to fire as the leaders are now leaving 16, I think it was, back with the Arrière de la Course, the rear of the race just now. These boys, especially the Italian on the back for Lampre, won't know where he is, so he can't abandon the race. He'll have to follow the arrows home.
Well, Pippo Pozzato and Juan Antonio Fletcher are in this group, but Phil, they're looking to get back around about 1 minute and 10 seconds. They're actually conceding time to that big group containing most of the pre-race favourites, so for them it's still a very long, hard ride. They may well get spurred on and encouraged by the fact that every now and again they can see the helicopter in the distance. This is a precarious section as we zigzag left and right, and you notice that little puddle of water there. Well, if that gets splashed onto the road, it just makes it a little bit more dangerous.
Well, this will be Serov off the back again. Hates the cobbles, but the gap is only 30 seconds now, so soon, round that far bend, we're going to see that front group begin to close up, and Serov will be doing well now to save his energy and allow himself to drift back into the chase group. No point in trying to stay with the 2 front runners now.
No, for him, the most important thing is just to try and survive these next sections. This is a very long, nasty section of cobblestones, one of the longest. In fact, it's 2 sections of cobblestones bolted together to make a total distance of 3.8 kilometers, and there he seriously is losing contact. But just look how strong the wind is here this afternoon, and that's what's going to make it a lot more interesting later on once we get to the final few sections, because it's the wind on the cobble sections that could actually split up and create the decision in this event.
And clouds off to the right, looking a little bit ominous, but so far the rain staying away from the riders, who are just concentrating on holding position now. The favourites, most of them, except we've lost two real favourites in Pozzato and Fletcher. They're not in that group behind, but they're still going to try and get back here. Just look at the wind now, ripping right across the race. But it's the course changes direction so often, you get all four directions before you reach Roubaix.
Really are battering along here. This is the Pipo Pozzato, Juan Antonio Fletcher group. They will be looking, you can just see the helicopter there. The helicopter will be riding over the group of favourites, so these guys will be able to judge just exactly what their relation is to the group that they want to be in. It's a tall order, though, I think, because of the number of big men who are in this leading break, for those guys to pull themselves back. But if you don't give up in Paris-Roubaix, you can still ride yourself back into the race. That's what's so special about this race. The race isn't over until you get down to the stadium here in Roubaix.
Or you finish up in a ditch, like George Hincapie a few years ago. We don't wish that on him today, though, as George, in his brand new white jersey of Team High Road, has got his team riding well here now. CSC of Stuart O'Grady will be pleased about that, and so too will Tom Bonin's team at Quickstep. The big boys are here. There's a lot of racing still to go, of course. There's still 15 sectors of these cobblestones. The last one is a sort of honorary stretch of some 300 meters, nice and smooth, just to remind the riders before they enter the stadium here in Roubaix. It has been a real hard man's race out there, and I wouldn't write out Fletcher and Pozzato just yet.
No, they're not going to give up, those two guys, until they've got absolutely nothing left in their bodies at all to chase back into the race. They're on the same section of cobblestones as the men they want to be with. But I tell you what, they're still looking for 1 minute and 10 seconds. Now there you can see Serov is back in the fold. A little bit of company for the first time in many, many kilometers, and the two riders who remain at the front still only have an advantage of 25 seconds. But Pozzato and Fletcher in their group are still holding these guys at 1 minute.
They're just about holding. They haven't got any closer, though, and I suspect that's significant. But once these riders get onto the long stretch of concrete pavement, they might ease up, and if they do, then that'll be Pozzato and Fletcher's chance to finally close the gap. Roger Hammond was the guy in white on the left of our picture, leading up the inside. Hammond, a former junior world cyclocross champion, perfectly suited to this race, as he's shown us a few years ago in 2004 when he finished third.
Well, he really likes this race, and as I said, it's a race where you have to be motivated. Almost to the end of this cobblestone section, we were given a time check of 25 seconds, but actually, Phil, once we turn off this cobblestone section, I think it's going to be more likely 10 seconds, and these two leaders will shortly be back in the fold.
And Jan Kuyks has got a problem. He's not going to even get that.
Flat tire.
The way he cornered, I say it's his front wheel that went there. He lost complete control of his steering. He pointed to his mate Pronk that he was about to go straight on there. He's got a wheel from the crowd. He's got time, but he's back in the chase group now. So there's just one man out in front now, Matty Pronk, who has been the strong man of that breakaway.
Well, they've got themselves just one lone leader, and I think fairly shortly he'll be back in the main field. We've got a bit of respite for the riders now in this group, Phil. They've got 7 kilometers before they find the next cobblestone section. That will be section number 15 to go, and that's the section from Warlang to Brion.
This looks to me as though they're getting themselves nicely organised. There's the end of the cobblestones just ahead, and that's where the group has just recently gone right. This is Pozzato here, and who's with him? Servais Knaven, former winner of this race, who's now on Team High Road. And he's supposed to be at the front, so he must have had a problem too.
Well, he too could be one of the riders who had difficulties getting themselves through the big forest of Arenberg. And I'll tell you one thing, though, unfortunately for Pozzato and Fletcher, they're not going to get any help at all from Servais Knaven, because he's got George Hincapie and he's got Roger Hammond in the front group.
So he gets the free ride.
Pozzato's changing his bike here. This is well planned.
Yeah, it was well planned. It was communicated. He obviously had a problem, and he's straight back in the thick of it. No time to change his shorts, so on we go.
Well, he obviously managed to get some information to the team management that he was having a bit of a problem here. That's the car of Team Tinkoff there that he will try and slipstream a fraction for. They can't hold back and wait for him, as the car with the red...
There's the referee.
Yep, he's going to keep a very close eye on the situation here. But Pozzato, I think, he's obviously not going to give up this bike race, Phil, without a fight. He wants to ride himself into the Paris-Roubaix again if he can. He loves this race, and he loves racing in the northern part of Europe.
Here's a photograph for Filippo Pozzato. Look, cheats never prosper in Paris-Roubaix, but there are so many other vehicles on this course. The referees do turn a blind eye when riders have these sort of problems, but blatant pacing, and they will disqualify you, and quite rightly so.
Immediately there you can see the front end of the main field now is being changed in colour. It's blue and white. It's Team Quick-Step. That's the team of Tom Bonen, and that's Tom Bonen riding in third place, and hovering behind him in his slipstream is big George Hincapie. Wilfred Kretschen's on the front here now for Quick-Step. Dedicated today, Phil, just to one thing, and that's trying to make sure that Tom Bonen can come out the winner for Quick-Step.
Well, 54 seconds when Pozzato changed his bike, so he got inside the 1 minute. These riders are all set now to sweep up Matty Pronk, and there is Pozzato quickly back with that group. So that was a smooth chase right onto the tail. Now he'll wait for a few minutes to recover, then he'll have to go to the front and drive with Fletcher.
They're actually starting to eat into the advantage of that group, because last time we got the time check back, they were inside of the 1 minute mark. Look at Carnarvon, he gets so low down on his bike there just to stay on the wheel of the rider in front. Fletcher's got a teammate with him to pace him along here, and just in there as well is Tyler Farrar for Team Slipstream Chipotle. You know, it's a team that's pretty much new on the block in a lot of these bike races, Phil, and I have to say they've really gone onto the learning curve very quickly.
Well, it's catch-up time now, because this is Pronk. He got away 92 kilometres in. We are about 75 kilometres from the end, and they've got him in their gun sights now, and there's no point in trying to hold them off, because they're coming. And Matty Pronk has been the strong man. A little bit unlucky that they lost Kykes with the front wheel puncture. Kykes, I presume, is back in this group and probably near the tail right now, because the strong men are firing.
Moving up on the right-hand side there, the champion of Belgium. You can see Stein de Volder wants to be part of the party here for Team Quick-Step. Hincapie slipping back into 5th place and saying, not a problem, boys. Keep doing the work. I'm going to sit here and wait for my moment to move, because one thing George Hincapie knows is Paris-Roubaix. He knows these races. He loves these races. And I'm sure today he will try and give us a big number.
Over one of the many canals here in the north of France, still used for transport of commercial goods, as the riders come over that narrow lift bridge, a cantilever bridge I think it was, as they now continue to chase down Matty Pronk, who's churning quite a big gear here, and he's doing well to hold them off. He must keep a little bit of strength in reserve for when they come up, as we're bound now for sector 15 of 28 sectors of cobblestones. 75 kilometres, just under 50 miles to ride.
Yeah, but there's still 15 sections of cobblestones to go, and that's the nasty thing about this race. And they do come in a very repetitive nature. Almost every 5 to 6 miles you go over these cobblestones. A bit of respite, getting yourself organised once again, and again you come back to the mayhem of the cobblestones, or the hell of the north as they're known. Quick-Step have got it pretty much under control. That's Stefan de Jong on the front now, looking across at Wilfred Kretschens, and they are not too worried. They're all looking now to see who else is going to work in this bike race, and that will give the advantage, Phil, to the men who are chasing behind Juan Antonio Fletcher and Pipo Pozzato, because the impetus has actually gone out of this group.
He might get back. Here he is, still sitting at the back of the group. But it's interesting to see that the strong teams are still in fighting up there. It's Team CSC, Team High Road, and Team Quick-Step. They've got control of the race at the front, but there are a number of riders waiting to take advantage of that in battle.
Well, the next section of cobblestones, and that's what this bike race is all about. This is section number 15 to go, and this is the section of Warlang.
We are now looking at sector 15, 2.4 kilometres of riding, 75 kilometres from the finish. One man is left out front, Matty Pronk. Poor old Jan Kykes had a front wheel puncture. The other one set off. He got caught by the group. Kykes is back here as well, and it is evident to us now the team of George Hincapie, Team High Road, the team of Tom Bone and Quick-Step, the team of Stuart O'Grady, CSC, they are driving this train and are driving it fast, and it's only 10 seconds now back to the leader.
Well, it should be all pretty much together once we come out of this section of cobblestones, but look at the performance of Pozzato's group there. They're down at just 45 seconds. They could get themselves, Phil, back into this bike race, and that would be phenomenal, because coming up shortly, we're going to short section in 4 kilometers after this one, and then the cobblestone section that I always find very scary indeed, the cobblestones of Orchy, and they're known, by the way, as the road of the abattoir, and I wonder what that means.
I don't know, but there could be a lot of dead people on these cobblestones coming up. We've ridden these cobblestones, Paul Sherwin and I have. They are vicious, they are horrible. The dust flies into your eyes when it's not wet. Well, poor Matty Pronk, he's had a great ride today as we head towards the slaughterhouse. And here we go now. And he's bouncing his way along here. Still in the distance there, just the dust. Good ride by Matty Pronk, this, the cycle Colstrap rider.
Well, you can see the front end of that group behind him. You can see the dust that's coming up. The rain that was promised here this afternoon certainly hasn't showed itself up, and I have to say a lot of riders will be happy about that, including one Tom Bonan, because I don't think Tom Bonan would enjoy the slippery conditions as would riders like George Hincapie, because Bonan will use his power over these cobblestones, and maybe he's not quite as agile as a bike rider like Hincapie.
And out of the dust, the shadows form. Some 25 riders are now coming up at a terrific rate of speed behind Matty Pronk. He's not given up without a fight, and he certainly hasn't waited for them. He wanted to clear as many cobbled roads and get them behind as he could, but he's going to get picked up now, and then this will be the head of Paris-Roubaix, edition 106. In there is the defending champion, Stuart O'Grady, the champion-elect, but he's never won. George Hincapie is there. Cancellara, the winner a couple of years ago, and the champion of Belgium and winner of last week's Tour de Flanders, Stijn de Volder. The men that matter are here.
Right now, they've just caught Matty Pronk. He's back in the fold. This is a dangerous moment as you're overtaking a rider who's slowing. They're using all of the road. It's amazing how these guys judge it to absolute millimeters when they go around these corners. And if there's a smooth section of road, thank you very much, they will take that as a free option if they can. It's dangerous, though, when you're riding a little bit further back, because you're concentrating only on the back wheel of the rider in front of you. And if he hits something, you're going to too. There's no chance of avoiding it.
But look at this, Paul. 5 riders from the Quick-Step team, because the guy in the jersey there of Belgian champion is in Quick-Step. 5 of them driving again, a familiar course for Patrick Lefevere's squads. He's won this race on many occasions. He's finished in the he's had the first 3 riders over the line on at least 2 occasions.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure on Team Quick-Step, because over the last 2 years their dominance has been taken away from this race. Here this afternoon, though, Phil, they are riding like a team on a mission. They don't want Team CSC to win this afternoon. They want the victory to go to Belgium.
So the leaders are together. It is goodbye to Sector 15, and all of the stars of this year's Paris-Roubaix are right here.
Right here and right now as they wait for the next section of cobblestones. That was cobblestone section number 15. They've got about 2 kilometers of smooth road here, Phil, before they go to the next section of cobblestones. And as you can see, all the teams have got this big organization at the end of the cobblestone section. They've got a few spare bikes, they've got a few spare wheels, and of course bottles to take on board, because what you do in a race like this is you're losing your bottles all of the time. Pipo Pozzato does not want to lose Paris-Roubaix, though, here this afternoon, because he's clawed back now to just 38 seconds.
And Servais Knaven is going with him, and that will put another very valuable man in the group for George Hincapie. Knaven won this race when he rode for Patrick Lefevere's squad, and he led home a 1-2-3, following in home Museo and Vainsains, all on the same at the time, the Domo cycling team. And so he's looking for the free transport. And in fact, Pozzato here, he looks as though he may be getting just a little bit tired.
Well, I'm not surprised. It's a blow to your morale when you've started a race as a big favourite beforehand, and then after that you go down in the ground before what is probably the most important strategic point. He'll suffer for a moment, I think, here, but he'll get himself back into this. And in fact, what has happened, he's dropped the group, because that group in front of him is the group of Juan Antonio Fletcher. So Pozzato is not having a great day.
You're right. In fact, the camera cutting back here, we didn't see the detached there, but in fact Pozzato is on the back foot there. Back up with the leaders, 71.5 kilometers to go, as they still continue to be driven on here by Team Quick-Step, who have at least 5 riders. We are now on sector 14 here, and it is still the train of Quick-Step with 5 riders on the front driving the train. Behind, at around about 35 seconds, Pozzato here is trying to drag himself back into the action, while Cervez Canavan, who won this race a few years ago, sitting there and waiting for a free journey back to the leaders.
Well, just around the corner was the group with Juan Antonio Fletcher, but this is the front of the bike race. 35 seconds back to Fletcher and Pozzato. This is the 14th to go section of cobbles, and this is the section of Tilloy to Sas et Rossi. Not far after that, Phil, they'll go on to a very short section of smooth road, and they will get themselves to the cobblestones at Orchy, the Chemin de Prière, or the Road of Prayers, followed by the Road of the Abattoir.
Trois Étoiles, 3 stars for this one, 2.4 kilometres. The halfway sectors of pavé, there's 28 in all. This is 14, and not all as vicious, but that is a typical shot of Paris-Roubaix. The shimmer of the dust that comes up from the riders, the Belgian flag indicating for the moment a tailwind, and all of the big teams have got their big riders up here.
Well, Team Barlow World are represented, but not with their South African Robbie Hunter, but with Baden Cook, the new signing. He's sitting there quite comfortably. He seems to be happy to have moved to this squad and found a nice place, I think, for the next couple of years of his career, and he may well could come up with a surprise this afternoon. This is the group of Juan Antonio Fletcher. He is hovering at 30 seconds. This man from Spain, who would normally be better reputed as a climbing man, has come up here to show us why he's such a great bike rider in these Northern Classics.
He's going to bridge this gap, and there in the front is the leading group here. Superb riding, didn't deserve the problem that put him off the back of the group, but he got it, and he's now about to claw his way back into the action. Pozzato, making a bit more of a meal of it, might still get back as well, but who knows what the cobbles have in store up the road.
Well, Pozzato there is really struggling to stay in contact with this group, and in fact he's losing contact all of the time. Fletcher's around the corner. Just look at the way these guys go around the corner on these cobblestones, hardly slowing down a fraction in their momentum at all. Quick-Step have got a nice man in this group here as well, because just sitting on the back of that group there for Quick-Step was Martin Wijnants, and that means if he catches up to the front, then Tom Boonen has got another ally.
Alexander Fletcher was the other rider also coming off the back. This looks like Roger Hammond here.
Carnarvon, Cervez Carnarvon.
Oh, sorry, Cervez Carnarvon. In fact, he looks as though it is Roger Hammond, though.
Well, I think it was Cervez Carnarvon because he had the national champion bands on his arm from Holland.
Yep. And it was Carnarvon, tis, yeah.
Just in front of him was Juan Antonio Fletcher, but Fletcher seems to have disappeared again.
Yes, and Cervez Carnarvon here, who was the man that took that great victory back in 2001. Now a big teammate of George Hincapie, having come onto the squad Team High Road this year. And like it or not, if Pozzato gets up there, he'll have given Cervez a free ride across the gap, and a very, very invaluable teammate to Hincapie will have been up there with him.
Well, just makes it that little bit more interesting for Team High Road. This is the group that they're chasing to try and get themselves into. And very shortly, I would think we'd get a chance to see whether or not Juan Antonio Fletcher's going to make it. They've come now off the end of the section of cobblestones.
The bike change here. Cookie on the left. He just indicated he had a problem with his wheel, and he stopped. Grabbing a wheel for him, and a big running out, because he's got to get back. He might well come back with Fletcher now.
Yeah, but in that confusion, I thought I saw Juan Antonio Fletcher go around the corner, so it looks as if he now has made the contact.
Oh, and there's been a crash here. Switch across the road, and a rider didn't quite see his number, but he went down. It was Silence Lotto who hit the deck there. Switch on the road. Well, you just never know when Paris-Roubaix bites back, do you?
You have to pay attention all of the time, and it must have been one of the big riders from Silence Lotto, because he's going back to help. But Juan Antonio Fletcher, number 11, the leader of Team Rabobank, gracias de nada, he's back in the group.
And he still looks cool. That's not a bead of sweat on his brow there. He takes a drink and comes up alongside number 27 there. But I tell you what, Paul, you never know when this is going to happen, do you? Just look at the cars lined up there now. The big boys are fighting back. Baden Cook was the latest puncture victim. He is now having to chase to rejoin.
Well, a little bit of respite now. This is the long, flat road in between the last section of cobblestones and the town of Orchy. And at the town of Orchy, there are 2 sections of cobblestones together. Fletcher up there having a chat with his teammate. That's why you don't give up in a bike race like this. Tom Bonin says, buenos dias, where have you been for the last 40 kilometres?
He says, you don't want to go back there, mate. It's not very pleasant at all. And now he's up in this group here. We'll await the arrival of Pozzato. I think the big boys have shut down just a little bit at the moment. And so Pozzato should get back here, and it may help Baden Cook and his Barlow World squad. He seemed to be the only representative from Barlow World. Johan van Summeren looking over his shoulder there. So the rider that punctured, I think, Paul, was probably Leif Hoster.
Well, that would be the only reason they'd sit up and wait for Leif Hoster again. It seems that he's dogged by bad luck. He had bad luck last week in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders, where he snapped his rear mechanism for changing his gears. Pozzato is struggling here, but I have a feeling now that Servais Knaven has seen this as a possibility to ride himself back into the race. And on the right-hand side, in the red and white jersey, there is Baden Cook. He's going to get himself back into the main field as well.
That's the sort of legs these boys needed right now. Cook is going to do them all a favour. He's got to move this race back together again. They've just entered the feeding zone here, which is where the riders will slow to grab their little packs of food for the rest of the long day that lies ahead. Still an hour and a half of racing, and this might help Baden Cook get back in, because see how they've slowed down.
Well, they'll slow down going through the feeding station, because at a point like this you do not want to miss taking on board a little bit of extra food and drink, but they need to get themselves into that group quite quickly now,
Cook
Phil.
is too strong. Look at this, he's ripped away.
He's got the form this afternoon. He's got the anger of having a flat tire at the wrong time. He knows he needs to get back into the group, because in 1.5 kilometres there's another section of cobblestones for the appetite.
Well, these riders now taking what food they fancy out of those little musettes, they call them, put them in their back pocket. The bags will go over the wall. The souvenir hunters will take those later. And just that momentary lapse now, as Cookie will have the chance. He has ridden away from the group Pozzato, which indicates they're tired.
Well, they are tired. You know, Pipo Pozzato tried very hard, but let's not forget, I think he was one of the riders affected most by that crash. He really must have heard. There's Baden Cook. That's a phenomenal ride there.
Bridged.
He's taken advantage of what I would have to say is only a motorway bridge to get himself back into the group. Baden Cook, I think, is riding like a new man in his career. He's going to have a good end to his season.
Well, the Barlow World team, it's a South African team, and they've gradually built till they had a wonderful Tour de France last year, and the enthusiasm now within the company is second to none. And Baden Cook was flying a big flag here, and also for himself and for Australia. He comes from St Kilda, down on the beach road there in Melbourne.
Well, Cookie's
got
his
bridging.
arm.
He's in.
He's in there. He's just had his arm up a few moments ago, and that probably would be just to call the team car forward because he maybe didn't have time to take on board his drink there. He took the risk of not taking on board a drink or any water because he used that as a chance to get himself back into the race. I think, though, Pipo Pozzato is about to make the junction there because there's another gaggle of about 3 or 4 riders just at the back end of that line.
I think they've come across because look at the gap now, and there's nobody chasing, so little semblance of order for the moment appearing here after the feeding station, leaving the riders about 40 miles, just over 60 kilometers to go to the finish. Oh, the calm around the village over the wall, and they wouldn't know what was happening on the main road outside. No, well, he has more or less got on, but it's been a labour, this one. Very, very laborious return. But this is good news for Hincapie because Servais Knaven is back. He's got a cool face on. He hasn't made any big effort, and he's joined the leaders.
Well, just stretching his back. This is a bike race that really hurts every part of your body. And for Servais Knaven, he knows how important it is in a race like Paris-Roubaix to have an extra ally just in case you have a mechanical problem down towards the end. So he will get up there quite quickly and say, George, here I am. Can I be of any assistance at all to you? Because I've had a long, hard chase to get back into this race.
Well, when he won this race in 2001, it was a turn of different members of the Domo team to attack. And when he attacked, there was no reaction because they were watching his more famous teammates, Johan Museu, who was a previous winner of this race at the time, and also the world champion, who was then the world champion, Roman Weinsteins. When they moved, the field reacted. When Knaven moved, he won the race.
Well, now a little bit of calm, I think, Phil, before the storm. Team CSC all over the front end of this bike race. O'Grady there over on the left-hand side. Behind him is teammate Fabian Cancellara, the winners of the last 2 years of this bike race. They're now, I think, just calming down a little bit, because although we're about to start another section of cobblestones at Beuvery, it's the cobblestone section after that in about 5 kilometers time, which everybody realizes is the next moment to try and launch a decisive attack.
Stuart O'Grady, there's the traffic on the main autoroute pulling off and causing a massive chaos here. We are now looking at the peloton as they swing on to sector 13. The Pozzato is back. So too is Cervez Canavan. So too is Juan Antonio Fletcher. And now they're going to rattle over the cobblestones here at the Berby-la-Forêt at Auchy, running alongside the autoroute to Valenciennes.
Well, it's a section of cobblestones at 1.4 kilometers in length. It doesn't sound very much, really, when you say it that quickly, does it? But there's 53 kilometers of cobblestones in total in Paris-Roubaix here this year. And for these guys, they know that they've now got another 12 sections to go after this one. It has been a battle of a race so far, and we're already down to maybe 25 or 30 riders who can win Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon. And Team Quickstep have decided we want to put the hammer down again, just to see if there are any weak men in this group.
What a great race this is turning out to be today. And just where will the next problem arise? Because it happens with the blink of an eyelid. The champion of Belgium and the winner of the Tour de Flanders is in this group. Only 7 riders have ever won both races in the same year. And Tom Boonen was the last man to do it. He's in the group as well.
Well, Tom Boonen knows that he's got a good, strong teammate alongside him. Boonen there in about 4th position. A little bit further back, George Hincapie's in this group, nice and comfortable. He's riding on the wheel of Stefan Weissermann, but the Aussie flags are out here this afternoon, and that must be for Stuart O'Grady.
It's got to be for Stuart O'Grady. His wife Anna-Marie is at the finishing line with his son, and his son asked the question in the week. He said, "Daddy, is Fabian Cancellara going to let you win on Sunday?" Which I found amazing.
Well, O'Grady's really enjoyed having the family around this week. They've been to all of the races. Tour of Flanders last week, Ghent-Wevelgem game on Wednesday, and now they're here at the finish line as well. But there are a lot of Australian supporters here in the velodrome who've made the journey across to Europe to be here and witness Paris-Roubaix firsthand.
Well, it's Quickstep again trying to do what they've done with such success in the past, and that's dominate the race with many, many riders. There's 5 of them in this group. CSC have got 4 of them in this group, including their strongman Cancellara and O'Grady. We've got other riders here too. Now, we think Leif Hoster punctured, and we haven't seen him come back. It doesn't mean he hasn't come back, we just haven't seen him come back. But the riders in the red jersey, I think he's back. There he is, tucking in. Although that's Van Summeren, Paul, he's still looking over his shoulder.
That's Johan Van Summeren. There was a rider from Silence Lotto stopped at the side of the road, so maybe Leif Hoster is getting himself back into this race. But one man who's made a great race to get himself into this group is Bernard Eisel, and that's another ally for George Hincapie and Team High Road, because Eisel himself was involved in an accident.
He was, and he's got back, so we didn't even see him come back. It happens all the time. There he is, just straightening his jersey. Team High Road, remember, this is the American team with terrific form this year. 22 wins of the both men and the women's squad. So that's a great start to their first season as Team High Road. The world champions bands on the shoulders there of Tom Boonen, who goes through camera. This is a very, very smooth stretch of road. They go inside this roundabout now, a diamond shape. These are the men of Paris-Roubaix. They've had a good race so far. Pozzato's got back. He'll be pleased now that the pace has eased off just a little bit. We started at tremendous speed today, picking up a tailwind on good roads away from Compiègne towards Troisville, and they were riding in excess of 55 kilometers in the hour. And now it's come down to this group after the battle of the Trench of Arenberg.
But what a battle for 2 men who came down onto the ground before the Forest of Arenberg. Pippo Pozzato, the Italian on Team Liquigas, and Juan Antonio Fletcher. At one time they were more than a minute behind. They wouldn't give up though. They battled themselves into this group. We're now in the town of Auchy, and if you ever ride a bike around this part of the world, you can always smell the chicory which is roasted in the big factories on the outskirts of town here. But what these guys are thinking about on the outskirts of town are the 2 sections of cobblestones that come back to back, the road of the prayers, and many of them must have prayers here this afternoon, and they hope that it's not going to run out for them in the road of the abattoirs, which comes straight after that.
From the prayers to the slaughterhouse here as we head into Auchy right now. The man on the front is Wilfried Kretskins, a very, very strong and faithful teammate of Tom Bonen, and indeed Stijn de Volder, the Belgian champion, who is in that group at the moment.
Just sitting on the back, number 27, if you caught a glimpse of him, that was Matty Pronk. He was one of the riders in that big three-man breakaway that was away for an awful long time, and he must be wondering what he's doing in the presence of all of these great stars of the sport of professional cycling this afternoon. A very small group, just 63 kilometres left to go. 3 kilometres to the start of the next section of cobblestones. They've got to make their way through the town. Once they go out through the industrial area, they all know exactly what comes next, and it's a really nasty section of cobblestones.
Yes, the town all closed down for the passage, the 106th passage of the Paris-Roubaix. These days starts at Compiègne, which is about 50 miles outside or 80 kilometres of Paris on the road to the north. The winner will come from this group. They split the field off behind. The field is probably riding fragmented. There might be 1 or 2 more come back, but not many. And look, if that was Leif Hosterpaul, he's back in the group.
Yep.
Because Silence Lotto have taken over.
Yep, he moved up around the outside. There he is, number 3 in the line of the red and black jerseys there. He's obviously had a very hard chase to get himself back into this race. And in fact, I think one of his teammates actually stopped at the side of the road and waited for him to pace him back into this event. Second place, though, is Johan van Sommer, and he's a big, tall rider looking over the shoulder to see what's coming up next. Well, here we go. It's the little zone industrielle just outside of Orchy, and then it's the next section of cobblestones.
And it's very narrow and it's horrible. And we go off this lovely road of concrete and they put them back on the cobblestones. Nick Noyen's here, another man that could win this race for Belgium. He rides on the French Cofidis team. I've also seen there now Alessandro Ballan, the one rider from Italy who could take this flag as well. He rode so well in the Tour of Flanders as defending champion a week ago when he finished 4th.
Well, who's this? Somebody's just sneaking off the front here. They know what's coming up next. They've seen the possibility. Now, this is a move by Team CSC.
This is a plan. This is CSC laying a plan here to put a man up front to try and get someone to chase them down. Now it's either Lundqvist again or it's Kurt Attel Arvidsson who's made a move.
Well, it was a good move there, and you see there's been no response at all, and this is exactly how Servais Knaven won Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago, because as you explained before, everybody was looking at Johan Museeuw.
Did you see the bunny hop?
Little traffic island there that everybody decided they'd go straight over the top of. There.
It's a crazy, crazy race, but it's
a great race. It's
and
brilliant. It is Lundqvist.
It's Lundqvist who's made the move. I think he's the sacrificial lamb for the boys. He's done a lot of pacemaking, and now either O'Grady or Cancellara have said, Marcus, have a go. Try and draw the sting of these other team riders to catch you. And this is where we go into the avenue of the prayers.
Well, it's going to be a big prayer for everybody that they don't have any problems at all. The start of this section of cobblestones is just over to the right-hand side.
We're now looking at the new leader here as Paris-Roubaix heads into sector number 12 in Orchy. And this is only 3 stars. It's 1,700 meters, but it's narrow and it twists and turns. And I'm sure this is a move by CSC now to try and draw the sting of Quick-Step and of Silence Lotto and of Team High Road.
Well, this young man is a teammate of Stuart O'Grady, the winner last year, and Fabian Cancellara, the winner of 2 years ago. Now, this is a nice tactical move because this would give a leapfrog for Cancellara or O'Grady to leap off the front and join a teammate. 2 men from the same team will not hold anything back at all, but you can see High Road have said, sorry, mate, we're not having any of that monkey business here this afternoon, and Bernard Eisel is pacing them back with George Hincapie there in 2nd place, and right behind Big George is Tom Boonen.
Tom Boonen locked in. They used to be teammates, Boonen and Hincapie. Hincapie fell off, so Boonen won, and then Boonen changed teams. And now they're bridging the gap. High Road are the drivers, and they had to happen, but that was a good move by CSC, and they are absolutely flying over this section now. For the boys at the back, it's a question of hang on in here.
Not taking any prisoners at all on this section of cobblestones. Hincapie looking very smooth. They're ticking those legs over nice and quickly. This is the damage that's being done at the back by that tempo set at the front by Team High Road. But what makes this race so very difficult, Phil, is in a moment they're going to make a left-hand turn and they'll start to get a very vicious crosswind.
Well, Lundqvist has happily got behind that tornado, just hit town, sitting behind the 3 workers there and trying to get clear. 4 of them now. There's a split in the peloton. It looks like Pozzotto's the man that opened the door in the middle. He's still tired from his chase.
Well, he must be suffering an awful lot. It was a massive ask for him to ride across a gap of around about 1 minute to get himself into this group once more. But he must have realised that all of a sudden the aggression was going to come back into the event. This now is the Chemin des Abattoirs, the road of the abattoir, the slaughterhouse. And these men are handing out a slaughtering pace here at the moment. Bonin, though, for me, looks very comfortable in third position there in the blue and white jersey.
Well, this is the next phase of Paris-Roubaix today now. They've all regrouped. Now it's time to open the gap up again. Bonin looks very good in third wheel. CSC, Cancellara, here comes O'Grady. He still looks good. Cookie, his Aussie mate in a rival team, sat on his back wheel there. And Leif Hoster is there as well. There's Roger Hammond in white for High Road.
Well, there's some big names there, but you can see the pressure is starting to come on at the front there. High Road are doing an excellent job, and they've got a lot of riders in the group. A little bit of respite once more, because now they get onto some smooth road, and very shortly they'll face up to some more cobbles.
Lundqvist asking on his little radio there, what do I do next now, because they're all back with me. So the leaders in Paris-Roubaix are all back together as we now head for Sector 11.
Slowing down a fraction, time to get yourself ready for the next onslaught of cobblestones, and there's a move going off the front. It looked like a move there going from Johan van Sommer, and I would expect that move to be one or two of the lesser riders. Pozzato, Phil, caught out here in the crossfire. Not surprising really, because that man has been on the ground already this afternoon.
I feel sorry for Pozzato today, because he's had to fight really hard. Nobody will help him. The trouble is, when you get a big name in cycling, you're the boy with the talent, you close the gaps.
That's the important thing. He's got a big name on his back, a big tag that says, I'm a man who could win Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon, and nobody will give him any credit at all for the fact. Oh, somebody went down there.
Fletcher. Was it Fletcher who went? It was certainly Rabobank. A very nasty fall. Oh, and another one. They must be hitting the dirt there.
This is Frederick Guédon. Baden Cook has gone down. Cookie went down there in the corner. You see, you come round that corner so fast. There's a little bit of gravel.
One.
I think that was Aurélien Claire who went down there from Bouygues Telecom. Those guys were going round that corner so fast, and there was a little bit of dirt on the road there, I think. Let's have a look at it. We're having a look again from the camera. He slipped on the dirt as he's gone around that corner. He was going just so fast, he just could not hold it.
Well, that really caught them off guard, and so too the riders who followed him round. Watch Baden Cook. We're not going to see him, but that was Cook who went down. In fact, this is Lundqvist, Paul, who fell.
And it wasn't Fletcher either who went down.
No, it wasn't Fletcher, and I could see his number. I had to probably help you out a bit better, but it looks to me as though it was Sebastian Langeveld who went down there. He had a very strong ride in the Tour de Flanders, and now he's in the ditch in Paris-Roubaix.
Well, Cookie's up and riding again. It was Aurélien Claire who went down for Bouygues Telecom, but just look how that happened. They came around that corner so fast. There was just a little bit of gravel, and once you start to slide at that speed, at that angle, there's nothing you can do at all. This is the leading group, let's not forget. That was Frederick Guédon. It still is Frederick Guédon on the front, a former winner of Paris-Roubaix himself. And O'Grady saw that as a possibility, and that's O'Grady just tagged on the back there in third place.
Stuart O'Grady is still one of the finest bike handlers in the world. He was once voted the top track rider of Australia and indeed the world. He can ride the track, which means your skills are usually second to none on those narrow boards of the velodrome. He's still trying to make up his mind whether he should go for gold on the track or the road in Beijing. His heart says the road. I think the selectors would like him to go for the track.
Well, it's a little bit difficult. Last time he went to the Olympic Games, it was in Europe, it was in Greece, so he was able to ride the road race, move up to Germany, ride on the boards a little bit to get his track legs back, and come back to get himself a gold medal. It's a little bit different in Beijing, Phil. It's a long flight to find himself another track somewhere else.
Isn't it just? The only Brazilian in the race, the only Brazilian of any note on the bike, is sitting right here at the back. Now, Muriel Fischer, number 44, and he wants help from his team car there. Probably wants to know what's happened to his mate Pozzato just now.
Third there in line is Tom Bonin riding alongside Stein de Volder. I think they'll calm down a fraction now. They're looking at 56 kilometers to go to the finish. Another section of cobblestones coming up shortly, and that's going to be at Bercé. That will be section number 11 to go, and that was what damaged the cobbles at Orchy did. These guys now trying to ride themselves back into this race. There's Cookie just at the front. Got up pretty quickly.
A bit, I would think. He's got up quickly. There's now 22 riders heading the charge to Roubaix, being driven by the American George Hincapie. He's seen it all before, Big George. He's had his faults, he's had his places. He wants more help.
Well, he's got a problem here because he's actually off the back of the group, and I don't know where he lost contact. He was right at the front end of this bike race.
In that crash, he must have been split by the crash.
Well, I'm not sure what he's looking for. He's not got the power here at all, and he's looking over his shoulder. I think he wants the team cars to go by.
I think you're right. He'd like a few cars in the space. It might help him catch up, and he's just had a little wave there at Rabobank. But Rabobank themselves delayed, by the way.
George has had a back tyre problem because you can see he doesn't have the same wheel on the back as he's got on the front. So obviously a problem. He had to change a wheel at the side of the road there, and now he's actually calling the team cars by because he knows that he's actually had a mechanical problem, and he has the right normally to get back in through the convoy of cars.
Well, he's coming back. Let's hope he's going to get back. It's a very important chase now for Hincapie here. We never saw the situation there. We did see the crash to Baden Cook, who is still behind. Meanwhile, CSC are still controlling this race for the moment at the front, but they've slowed it down just a little bit. O'Grady second wheel here.
O'Grady looking very comfortable, but so too is Fabian Cancellara, while Pozzato here, number 41,
he's back,
has got himself back into this race once again.
So Baden Cook on the left of our picture too. Well done, Baden Cook, because he's had a rough hour, hasn't he?
He's been up and down. Certainly he had a flat tire at the wrong place, rode himself back into the event, and then he was looking at a nice little breakaway forming, and he took himself off into the ditch. But now he's back in the leading group of riders at just 54 kilometers left to go. But when I say 54 kilometers left to go, they're not smooth at all, because there are 11 sections of cobblestone still to go in this bike race.
Don't remind us, Paul. This has been a superb bike race. As a commentator, it's a brilliant event to call. But I have to say, you've got to appreciate what these riders go through out there. It's a bizarre scene. The helicopters hovering there, checking out who's going where. 54 kilometers still to ride. A traffic jam now. Our motorbike won't stop for that.
Well,
trying to pick his way through to find out what is a rider on the right. I think it was Liquigas.
It was Murillo, I think, the rider who had
Fischer.
that problem, and still Hincapie's trying to ride himself back into this race. You see, that is a wheel on his back there, taken from one of the Nutra service vehicles, and he's got to get himself back into the event.
And there's the brave gendarme too on his motorbike. He's trying to get back to the front to keep the guys on course. Hincapie's done well. I think he got caught in that crash, but he's picking through the cars now. So Hincapie's putting himself back into the race here as quickly as he can.
Well, this is the chaos that these riders have got to contend with all through the afternoon here at a race like Paris-Roubaix. The team managers have the incredible skill of not only looking forward, but using all of the mirrors, the rear view mirror, the two side mirrors, to make sure that there aren't any bike riders coming by them. And they will in fact use the horn to warn the team manager in the car in front that there are riders coming back through the main field.
Rivals or not, the drivers of these cars appreciate the efforts of all of the riders here. We are now moving on to the next sector of Pavé. The group Hincapie is trying to close a gap of some 18 seconds back to the leaders, but Johan van Summeren of Silence Lotto drives on at the front to break them up again.
Well,
this is sector 12.
This is sector 11 to go. This is the sector of Orchy to Bercé. It's a very long section of cobblestones too. It's 1.2 kilometers long. But Johan van Summeren is an unbelievable bike rider. Here he's doing this not for himself. He's doing it to toughen up the race for his own teammate Leif Hoster, but he's proving to be a real powerhouse here this afternoon. And Stein de Volder is seeing this as dangerous. He's coming across, and immediately de Volder moved. Then came Tom Bonen.
Because you never know when the winning move will come along in Paris-Roubaix. And so Stein de Volder, who made his move fairly early on in the Tour de Flanders last week and won, is now looking to do it again here. As I said earlier, only 7 riders have ever won Roubaix and Flanders in the same year.
Well, there you can see the move going clear now. This has been a lot of pressure from Silence Lotto, and I can't see Leif Hoster caught in the crossfire there at all. But the man who has reacted is Tom Bonen and his own teammate there, Stein de Volder. They realise how strong this young guy is. You know, he's a kind of man who will ride on the front of the peloton in the Tour de France or any of the classics for 40 or 50 kilometres. You give him a chance on a day like this, and he could ride away and get the biggest win of his career.
Well, you bet you. He's only ever won one race, Paul, the Tour of Poland last year. But I'll tell you what, there isn't a person who wouldn't love him to win, and you don't mention Van Summeren's name in the same breath as O'Grady, Cancellara, Tom Bonen. Oh, and there's been another fall here at the back of the race.
Yeah, you see just a little bit of mud on these cobblestones. It makes them absolutely treacherous. Now watch how it happened here. Just going up there, the rider from Bouygues Telecom just went down, and poor man at the back from Landbouw Credit, he had nowhere to go. That was Kevin Neerink here from Landbouw Credit. And the man who went down from Bouygues Telecom there was Alexandre Pichot.
Yeah, he's been hovering at the back for quite a while now, along with Neerink, but they've both paid the price now, and they've fallen, but they might get back. I don't know. Here comes Van Summeren, gritting his teeth. He's pulled away a very select group at 52 kilometres to go.
And Tom Bonen there is getting onto the wheel of Fabian Cancellara, and there's a rider in this group, Phil, I have to say, from Team Slipstream Chipotle, and I think that could very well have been Tyler Farrar.
Well, if it's either Tyler Farrar or Martin Maskrant, we'll find out as we can, but George Hincapie is missing the action here. He's got to repair the damage. He's still looking very cool, and Van Summeren will not give up. De Volder, the champion of Belgium. Paul, what a great performance he's done as in the current year of champion.
And Stuart O'Grady is in this group as well. He's seen this as a very big chance here this afternoon. Another serious sorting out on the roads of Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon. That is bad news, I have to say, for George Hincapie, because that's going to put a lot of pressure on this group. You see 3 more men scrambling to get themselves across the gap. Hincapie caught nowhere in this main field. He's got to get himself to that 3rd group on the road if he wants to stay in Paris-Roubaix.
8 guys trying to go clear here. Big names in the world of cycling. It was Johan Van Summeren who forced the gap here. But now the top names are trying to recover. It is Martin Maskrant for Slipstream Chipotle.
Well, he's done a great ride. He was 12th last week in Paris-Roubaix, and the team have said, well, we really don't know how good this young guy is going to be. Well, if he's in with the mix with these names, Alessandro Ballan, Leif Hoster, Tom Bonen, Stuart O'Grady, Fabian Cancellara, I think that's quite a reference.
Well, this race is not laying down yet, but there is a new group forming at the front. 8 riders now trying to break clear on the road to Roubaix. These 3 riders here trying to get on terms, Paul.
Well,
they might well do it too.
Trying to get across there was Fabio Baldato, and he's amazing the way he's riding, Phil, at 40 years of age. But this is a group of select men. There's Ballan over on the right-hand side. This is Stijn de Volder, the winner a week ago of the Ronde van Vlaanderen. Tom Bonen is looking good. At the moment, though, it's a pretty balanced game between Team CSC and Team Quickstep. It's 2 against 2.
Cancellara paid attention, didn't he?
He certainly did. So did Stuart O'Grady. There's O'Grady. These are the 2 former winners of last year and the year before, and they've made this split here again this afternoon.
And Bonen, we've got the last three winners here right now. Over the last 3 years, they're in the group, and Cancellara is itching to go. All week we felt Cancellara has been going really well, but he's been trying to hide his form, and now he's in the move with his teammate O'Grady. They've got some cards to play now. 50 kilometres to go.
Well, that's 1.5 kilometres again, Phil, to another section of cobblestones. 10 to go. Mons-en-Pervel, and they are nasty. They are normally very muddy. They're right in the middle of a mud pit of a field. 50 kilometres to go, officially just over to the right-hand side of the road, and these guys have got a serious gap.
And here comes Martin Maskrant to fly the colours of the new American squad. Slipstream Chipotle up for the Tour de France this year. I can't believe they put Martin in. He's only a youngster.
Well, he really is an incredible bike rider, and he must be looking around at the faces of the other men with him in this group saying, wow, what am I doing here? Well, I tell you what, you're learning. You're on a fast learning curve, mate, because you are with the top men in the world and the specialists of Paris-Roubaix over the last few years.
Leif Hoster is also in this group, so Silence Lotto have got themselves a couple of guys up here. Stijn de Volder is the champion of Belgium. He's got his mate up in Tom Bonen. We're cutting back here to the group, and George Hincapie has got himself back to the group, but he's only going to come here and find that 8 men have already gone through the stable door.
Well, that's the tough thing when you have an accident there. Again, you can see one of the other riders who went down at the back there, the rider from Bouygues Telecom. He went down very hard indeed. That was Alexandre Pichot. But this is the group that George Hincapie would like to have been with.
And look how fast these boys are moving now. I haven't quite nailed down the Lamprey rider, Paul, but he's got the riding style of Alessandro Ballan. And now we've got all the names coming up. Well, we've given you all these names. We just want to see the next caption, and it should say Alessandro Ballan, and it does. And he's a big danger man up here. This is a very select group, and it really, if it was any race except Paris-Roubaix, I would say one of these guys is going to win.
Theoretically, you would say the race is pretty much all over, bar the shouting, but that doesn't discount the fact that we've got some great champions in this group behind as well who seriously want to win. I'm looking down there at 49.5 kilometres to go to see who is riding on the front end of this group, Phil, and I think it's Team High Road. They want George Hincapie to win this afternoon. They want Roger Hammond to have a crack, and this is another difficult section.
Here we go again, 3,000 metres now, sector number 10, Mons-en-Pévèle. It is 5 stars, which means it is the ultimate in pain. And there's 8 riders heading to it just ahead of the group, containing George Hincapie, who has chased and rejoined the chase group. We have Johan van Summeren, Tom Bonen, Stein de Volder, Stuart O'Grady, Martin Maskrant, Fabian Cancellara, Leif Hoster, Alessandro Ballan, and as we look now, it is de Volder, the champion of Belgium, heading towards home and moving.
Well, he's putting a lot of pressure now onto Johan van Summeren, who started all of this. In fact, he's riding away, and is he going to try and put himself into the list of riders who've won the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix in the same year? There's not many men have done that. Bonen has done it, and so too as Peter van Petegem. But here we can see the pressure on the front end of the race, and Bonen again, Phil, is quite happy to sit there and let everybody chase down his teammates.
It's up to them to chase Stein de Volder, give Bonen the free ride he's aiming for here. They know that de Volder has got good legs after his brilliant ride a week ago in the Tour of Flanders, a race of a very similar nature to this, but it doesn't have the same magic as the Hell of the North, on the nickname the Queen of the Classics.
Juan Antonio Fletcher is the man on the front of this group. He's had a lot of bad luck here this afternoon, and he's trying to ride himself back into Paris-Roubaix. You can see him, you can recognize him by his style there as they two are on this long section of cobbles. The section of cobbles at Mons-en-Pévèle, as you said, Phil, is a 5-star rated section of cobblestones, and it is 3 kilometers length in total.
After 210 kilometers of pedaling, the riders are getting tired now. Every move is a dangerous one, so they can't allow the gap to open. And Stein de Volder, we know, is not afraid to go for gold a long way out from the finishing line, and here he goes.
This man is radio controlled, I reckon, by the team car. They've just said to him, put the hammer down, see what you've got in those turbines of yours, and the turbines have stretched the gap between him and those men behind. And again, Bonen just sits there. This is going to put pressure onto Fabian Cancellara. It's going to put pressure onto Stuart O'Grady. They can't let this man get 30 or 40 seconds, because if they do, he's a tough guy to pull back. He's a great individual time trialist.
He is, and because he can ride alone against the watch and ride very fast, if they give him his freedom to relax and get his second wind, he's going to go at high speed to the finish. Only the cobblestone will bite him all the way down to the finishing line. A little chance to look how the pounding on that chain here as he now leaves the 5-star sector. Or he doesn't, he just goes round the left-hand bend. All those flags are the flags of Flanders, of Belgium here. A very select chase group. I feel very sorry for George Hincapie just now. His problems came at exactly the wrong time.
Well, that's what this race is about, Phil. It's not about having good luck. It's about making sure you don't have any bad luck. Now, Van Summeren is really suffering. He's the man who set this up for his teammate Leif Hoster, but now he can do nothing to pull himself back up to Stein de Volder. That's a very large group there now, which contains George Hincapie and a few other favourites. Looks as if it's a Christophe Mongin on the front. He's a rider who formerly was a French cyclo-cross champion, but it's chaos in this group as they try to get themselves organised.
Well, you can see the strength of the wind again coming across the course just for the moment here as they try to pull back that breakaway, but they know they've got to shut it down and shut it down quickly. We're heading towards sector 9 once we clear this 5-star sector, and then we will continue in zigzag fashion up towards the track in Roubaix.
Well, Team High Road have got a man up there. There's 2 riders from Team Rabobank. One of them is Juan Antonio Fletcher. He too has had an awful lot of bad luck here this afternoon. Hincapie's in about 12th place there in his white jersey of Team High Road.
Well, these riders are getting through this 5-star section without problems. The only problem is they've got a group of 8 riders who are prizing open the gap here. You're looking at those multi-gears here. The fact that the tyres are a little bit heavier than normal. That one team, Français Jeux, Paul was telling me, are riding on tubeless tyres, and that's a first. There we are as the wind rips across northern France here. 8 riders are going clear, sadly at the moment, without George Hincapie, and the champion of Belgium is leading the way.
Well, the champion of Belgium has put the pressure on there, Phil, definitely.
There's the flag of Australia sweeping across the crowd. 46 kilometres to go, but just for the minute, they're going to have to work out what they're going to do about Stein de Volder, and the big risk is they will take forward Tom Bonen, and he is the other favourite from Belgium.
But the names, Phil, in that group, the second group on the road there, are phenomenal. You're looking at Ballan, O'Grady, Cancellara, Tom Bonen, Leif Hoster. These are men who are specialists in this kind of bike race. Hoster is off the cobblestones now. He's got himself an advantage of around about 10 seconds.
Martin Maskrant for the slipstream team here. He's never experienced Paris-Roubaix before, but he's caught on pretty quickly, Paul, as he's gone with this leading group. Stuart O'Grady carries number 1, the right of the man who won the race last year, the only Australian to win it, as O'Grady now moves into the Grand.
Watch out for O'Grady. He's seen how dangerous this is, and he's taking the advantage now of the little feeding station there to go off the front of this group, because O'Grady has seen this as the opportunity to get with a very strong bike rider. If O'Grady and De Volder get together, could be curtains.
And what a great race that would be. Australia versus Belgium. And now O'Grady has got his sights firmly fixed now. It's an interesting move because the 2 top teams have got riders ahead. Who's going to chase?
Well, just watch this. This man has got an incredible tactical nose. He could see and feel that Alessandro Ballan on the front was not riding hard. He knew there was going to be no response there at all by Tom Bonan. So he said, I've got to get this at this point. And he's almost across.
And we are around about 43 kilometres from the finish. The champion of Belgium leads, chased by the former champion of Australia, Stuart O'Grady. And this is the champion of Belgium now. It's almost as if he's hearing our commentaries. He looks round because he must know that the man from Adelaide is coming across at high speed. Look at this. It's the speed that won him a gold medal in Athens in the Madison. Almost forgot the event for the moment, as now O'Grady tries to bridge. Well, this is going to give us a very, very interesting tactical situation now. Our cameraman just realised it was O'Grady as well. There's the shot from the camera. O'Grady coming up behind the man on form this week, Stein de Volder. This is going to be a great battle now, because these 2 boys are heading the charge. Next stop will be Pavé sector number 9. And O'Grady, I knew he was kidding all week. He's been sitting on some great form. This is leaving it all the work at the back group here to Johan van Summeren, the rider who caused the split, remember. Johan found he got his strong man across in Leif Hoster, but it's still down to him, the super domestique of Silence Lotto. This, by the way, is the same team as the other Aussie, Robbie McEwen. McEwen doesn't like Paris-Roubaix, so he isn't riding. He's watching it on telly. Who wouldn't be? Most comfortable seat in the house right now as Van Summeren leads the charge. Cancellara sits in second wheel. It's his mate Stewie who's gone clear, and so he's not going to take up the chase. The slipstream Chipotle rider Martin Mascran, he's not got the experience to do anything right now except watch what the big boys do. So this has got a good feel about it just now, because Tom Bonan's handicapped. De Volder is here. And it looks as though Stein de Volder were just like O'Grady to come through. But, you know, when you bridge the gap like that, then it takes a little bit time to remind the heart it's got to move at the same speed as the legs. So he needs a rest before he can start working with him. And de Volder can't afford to slow down, so he'll have to keep making the pace. 18 seconds. That's where the gap is starting from. 44 kilometres to go. And sitting at the back, Leif Hoster, the rider who 3 times has finished second in the Tour de Flanders, had such rotten luck last year. The sort of luck that Baden Cook has experienced today. And he's put Cookie out of the action right now. And so too George Hincapie, the same bad luck. Now we're on to sector number 9, a mere 700 metres and only 2 stars. A time for these 2 to consolidate their lead.
Well, they've got a big advantage. They both belong to 2 of the top teams in the world, 2 of the teams that have dominated Paris-Roubaix over the last few years. And Stuart O'Grady must be thinking his boat's coming here this afternoon, but Leif Hoster has seen the danger here too now. He wants to pull this all back together. He knows now the responsibility of this bike race is on his shoulders.
The Pont-à-Marc. And this is another little bone rattler here. It's being left now to Silence Lotto to do all of the chasing. The other boys are sitting in the armchairs, watching and waiting. Bridge the gap, and Cancellara or Bonan will be the next to attack. That's the great benefit of having strong men on the top teams in the world. And O'Grady is on the top team in the world right now. But it is so good to see the defending champion riding like this.
Well, he's got the form, and we never expected him after that dramatic crash in the Tour de France last year, Phil, to be one of the men for Paris-Roubaix this year. It's in fact a bonus that Stuart O'Grady's racing his bicycle again, but here this afternoon he's not only racing it, he's dictating the pace in the bike race. He saw the danger of letting Stein de Volder go clear, and he responded immediately. But by doing that, he takes the pressure off his own teammate Fabian Cancellara behind as well.
We are running into about 50 minutes of racing, just around about 40 kilometres to go. It isn't very far in professional terms, but remember, these boys have now ridden the best part of 220 kilometres and at very high speed today because of the prevailing wind for the first 100 kilometres.
Well, the weather has been good to the riders. The tailwind has pushed them at high speeds, as you've mentioned, but at least it's pushed the clouds out of the sky as well, and this has been so far a dry Paris-Roubaix. Stuart O'Grady now has come to the front to assist in the development of this breakaway with Stein de Volder, and I wonder what Tom Bonen is thinking in the group behind, because this is exactly the same scenario as last week when Stein de Volder leapt away in the Tour of Flanders and he had to sit back and play the ultimate teammate.
Well, there he is now, de Volder second wheel behind Johan van Summeren, the rider who forced the issue a few cobblestones ago. It's his job to try and get Leif Hoster back up to that group. Then I would imagine he'll just drop away from the action. He's called the domestique of the team. He's not a winner, but boy, he's a great bike rider.
And a great worker too, number 71, Alessandro Ballan. He's just seeing how affairs unfold at the moment, but it's put pressure onto the shoulders of Silence Lotto. And Johan van Summeren, more than any other bike rider I know, Phil, will turn himself inside out for his teammate Leif Hoster there as he goes around the corner in first position. You know what, they're in a difficult position, Team Silence Lotto there, because sitting behind them, they got Fabian Cancellara, teammate of O'Grady, and they've got Tom Bonen, teammate of de Volder.
And they're not going to do anything right now. And watch out for Alessandro Ballan. He's handicapped at the moment. He can't attempt to catch these two. The others will take him. He's going to have to hope they keep these two in sight, and then I bet that Ballan will try and make a solo rush for the line.
Well, he's a great bike rider. He loves these classics. He's a former winner of the Tour of Flanders, but so's that man there in the Champion of Belgium's jersey. O'Grady's played his cards very close to his chest this week. I've talked to him ever since the Tour of Flanders, and he says, yeah, mate, I'm not going too bad. Just trying to keep it underneath the radar. Well, today, he's taken the radar away.
He's definitely done that. He had a plan all the time. And he knows Cancellara is also firing on all cylinders. They've got two terrific guns here. Tom Bonen looks pretty cool right now. Again, he's handicapped by the move of a teammate he knows has good legs and is riding at the top of his career after his win in Flanders, where Tom was as delighted as Stein de Volder. Tom threw his arms in the air when de Volder won as well. It's all about that at this level of professional cycling. You may have the extreme talent. It doesn't mean you always win.
Well, I just hope that the Belgian press can understand that tomorrow, Phil, because they just want one man to win. They want Tom Bonen to win. They don't care whether it's the work of a team or whether he works like a teammate. But unfortunately, I think that's the important thing with Team Quickstep as we now look at section number 8 to go of these cobblestones. And this is the section of Pont-Thibault to Ennevelin.
And again, another rough section here. The crowd know this one. By the way, it's a little bit of a renter crowd because they know these sectors of pavés. And as soon as the riders pass through, it's over to the motor vehicles, down the road, and watch the race at the next sector. So it's always a massive crowd, mind you, as it has been ever since this race begun back in 1896.
Been around for a long time, and thankfully they've blessed these cobblestones with a government process to make sure that they are preserved for the history of this race and for the history of the sport. Now there's a big move coming forward now from Silence Lotto. They've seen this as the possibility of getting across the gap.
Well, one move follows another move. They've got to shut it down. They know it's beginning to run away. It's big Johan van Summeren again who's trying to force it and split up this break. It is very, very cruel out there right now, and just look at this.
Well, van Summeren has given his all here this afternoon, Phil. He just cannot stay in contact there. He's gone off the back of the group. Not surprisingly, he set something up for his teammate there, Leif Hoster. Hoster now is on his own.
It's a big effort, and as I said earlier, he's got to do the effort, hopefully catch them up and then fall away, but it looks as though he's done the big effort and fallen away, and he hasn't caught them up. It is still the Belgian-Aussie tandem out there now, and this is Ballan sitting just off the back, followed by Martin Maskrant. These are the two outsiders who are trying to profit because of the teamwork of Team CSC and Quickstep. And boy, they played their card. Yes, that's right, Quick-Step and CSC. They played the cards. The big losers at the moment, I have to say, is Team High Road. It all went a little bit pear-shaped for them on the cobblestones.
Well, I have to say, if you're looking at it from that point of view, the big winner, we were expecting CSC and, of course, Quick-Step to ride. Well, the big winner's got to be Slipstream Chipotle, because their man, Martin Mascant, in this group is a phenomenal find. The other names of the riders in this group, we knew well before the start of the race, Phil, were favourites for this bike race this afternoon, but we certainly didn't expect to see this man ride the way he's doing.
I did. I'm only joking, Paul.
Of course.
No, all last year I followed him. Don't ask me why. I was invited to a race in Brittany called the Tour de Bretagne. It's a higher level amateur race, and this boy Mascant was riding, and I thought, he's such talent. And I watched his results all year. He got some great results, and that was a shrewd move by Jonathan Waters of Slipstream Chipotle to take him on board, and he's been well rewarded to find his way into the decisive move of Paris-Roubaix at the first attempt. Phenomenal. What a great future.
Well, this is the next group on the road there. This is the group of Pippo Pozzato and Juan Antonio Fletcher. Look at Fletcher there on the front, not asking anybody for any help at all. But that acceleration by Leif Hoster there has now pulled Stuart O'Grady and De Volder back into the fold. Now wait for the counter move.
Well, the only man that they've lost right now is Van Summeren, who started the break and caused the damage. And now we've got these 7 riders, and Hoster is still full of fight.
So is De Volder. Look at this. He's decided he's going to have a move.
De Volder. Sorry, Paul. Yeah.
He's had another move there. O'Grady says, no, mate, you're not going anywhere without me this afternoon. And he's straight onto him. I think we'll get a moment of respite now, because we've come off that section of cobblestones. We've got another 2 or 3 kilometres before we get to the section at Templeuve, which is only a short section of about 200 metres. But once we go to the town of Sizouin, that's when we get to another really nasty section, the section from Sizouin to Bourgel, where in the past we have seen the winning move go clear.
Well, that was a very good move by Stein de Volder and countered by Stuart O'Grady. Yes, they brought it back, but at what cost to those legs at this stage of the race? Inside 40 kilometres from the finish. It also cost Silence Lotto their second firing up here, because Johan van Summeren has dropped off. Sorry about that little bit of picture breakup. That's caused by the cobbles and the trees, by the way, as we now look down here at these fantastic pictures today of a brilliant race of a group of very strong men, none of whom will say enough is enough.
Well, Juan Antonio Fletcher, I don't think he's going to win his Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon, Phil, because Race Radio just crackled through with a time gap of 1 minute and 40 seconds back to the Juan Antonio Fletcher group.
There it is.
And that is a little bit sad, because he battled to get himself back into the fray, and unfortunately in that group with him is George Hincapie.
Yes, a victim of the capture back there now, as these boys are free to fly. Of course, they never know when the puncture bug will bite or they'll slip off, as we saw Baden Cook do. He is back in that second group as well, when he looked to be on terrific form today. But a puncture followed by a crash, and so far he's out of the hunt now. But Stuart O'Grady, the defending champion, whatever happens, has flown the flag in defence of his title here. Absolutely brilliant. My big fear is still Alessandro Ballan. Oh, he's got a problem, but he might just want a drink. But he is the rider who has no reason to chase, no reason to work, because he's outnumbered by the other boys. So he'll just watch them and try and take advantage.
He's watching the battle that's developing between CSC and Team Quick-Step here this afternoon, and he's going to hope that he can take advantage of it. Mascant, by the way, the young rider in fourth position there for Team Slipstream Chipotle. Last year, he was the under-23 champion of Holland in the road race, and he went on to win the prologue of the Tour of Alsace, which was a prologue time trial at the time. And I have to say that Jonathan Waters has got to be very happy with this performance, because he's proving now to the organisers of the Tour de France that Team Slipstream Chipotle is not just any other team. It's a team that can participate in the race and dictate the pace of the race, as we're seeing this young man do now.
Well, I haven't checked his age, but I think he's about 22 or 23 years old. He's got a terrific longevity ahead of him. And looking around at some of the most famous names in the world of cycling and showing no fear to be part of them. Stein de Volder, the champion of Belgium, and again coming right up behind him, almost as if he intends to follow him wherever he goes, is O'Grady. And here comes another move now, and they've got to dodge through the motorbikes to counter it.
Well, there's a move going there, and this is Tom Boonen trying to catch him out, but Cancellara said, sorry, Tom, you're not going anywhere without me. And now, once the move has started, you notice Alessandro Ballan was paying a lot of attention.
And he's caught O'Grady and De Volder on the back heel here, because the sprint has suddenly found them lacking attacking after their move, so they're going to have to grit their teeth and get onto Maskrant's back wheel. Maskrant himself knows they're behind. He's also beginning to struggle.
So is Leif Hoster too. He's been the man who was responsible for pulling back the breakaway of Stuart O'Grady and Stein de Volder, and he's caught in the crossfire. I think all of a sudden we're going to see that Fabian Cancellara will look over his shoulder, see how the race has developed, and he may well decide to sit up, but he may well fancy his chances with Tom Bonen.
Into Templeuve now as we head towards the cobblestones here, which are sector 7. They broke into 2 sectors, 7A, 7B, so really there's 29 sections. But anyway, there's 2 sector 7s as we now start to get back towards the stones again. Now you see the automatic move came from Bonen because of what Stein de Volder, his teammate, had done. It was down to him to launch an attack and try and break up the CSC duo. But it hasn't worked because Cancellara has gone with him.
Well, Cancellara saw that move and he immediately covered it. We're right onto the cobbles now, and Alessandro Balan has decided that rather than have Bonen and Cancellara dictate the pace to him, he's going to have a go at this. This is section number 7 to go. This is the section of Templeuve. It's only 200 meters and it only ranks as a single star, but it leads the riders from Templeuve down towards Sizouin, and that's where we've got another hard sections through the town of Bourguel.
This is still not a nice section, believe me, as the windmill's been turned on, especially for the passage of Paris-Roubaix. And there's the giants of the region getting again the best view of the race, and what a race we are seeing as Cancellara. I did tell you about Balan. He's been watching and waiting while the teams have played their cards. He's now thinned out the odds. It's 1 against 2 riders on rival teams, and he's got in the move. He's a very clever bike rider.
Well, he knew that that was the move, and he was waiting for the counter move to come. Leif Hoster's the man who got caught out. There you can see now are the 3 leaders. Tom Bonen on the front, Fabian Cancellara in 2nd place, 3rd place Alessandro Balan. They're on another section of cobblestones here. As you said, this is 7B, the sector of the Moulin de Vertin.
And Tom Bonen is free to fly now, and the Belgian press will be delighted because Stein de Volder is on the defensive while teammate Tom is on the attack. Maskrant is ducking and diving in the cobbles now to grab anything that comes by his way. Leif Hoster, and look who's stirring the pace again, Stuart O'Grady.
Well, O'Grady wanted to see if these guys had any weakness. He won't try and drag them across to the leading group of riders because he's got Fabian Cancellara in that group, but if he feels he can go away alone, he will certainly grab that opportunity.
Well taken. Tom didn't like the vintage, so he's thrown it away again. As now we've got Cancellara driving at the front, the man that won the prologue of the Tour de France in a wonderful weekend in Britain last year in London, and he's off and winning again this year with a win in the Milan-San Remo Classic.
Well, I tell you what, if Fabian Cancellara was to win this race in the same year that he won Milan-San Remo, I know you're a man for the statistics, the last man who actually did that happened to be Sean Kelly. And to go back to the man who did that previous to that, you have to go back to 1908. It's not something that happens very much, and even Eddie Merckx, in the great years that he won Milan-San Remo, was never able to win Paris-Roubaix as well.
Yeah, but I was there in 1908. You weren't, anyway. So what was that about? 1985 Kelly double?
Yeah. So it's a very rare thing for a bike rider to win Milan-San Remo and Paris-Roubaix in the same season, and that's what Fabian Cancellara is trying to do.
This.
15 seconds is the
teammate
gap.
shutting down. Teammate shutting down. De Volder says, I'm not going to chase him. O'Grady said, it's not down to me. So they're forcing poor old the youngster Maskrant now to take up the chase.
Well, Leif Hoster, I think, has shot his bolt here this afternoon because he doesn't have very much left and he doesn't have the confidence to be able to pull this group back. So they're almost raising the white flag in surrender here this afternoon. And the big power you see of having a strong team is you've always got teammates behind to defend.
Well, this is beginning to look like the podium places are sorting themselves out here. Alessandro Balan against 2 very, very big names in the sport of cycling. The former world champion, Tom Bonen. The reigning world time trial champion is Fabian Cancellara. And because they've got 2 teammates in the group behind, they will not be chased down. Maskrant will not have the legs, and I don't think Leif Hoster has either.
Well, this is the next group on the road. Looks like the lanky figure of Frédéric Guédon, the former winner of this race for France. In fact, the last Frenchman to win Paris-Roubaix this afternoon, trying to get himself off the front end of that group, but they're a minute and a half in arrears. These 3 men, Phil, they have got serious pedigrees. former winners, 2 of them of Paris-Roubaix, former winners of the Tour of Flanders, including this man who won Tour of Flanders last year. You can't pick a winner from this group really if they were go to the velodrome together.
No, you can't. Big Tom Bonan will not feel very content taking these 2 boys into the track at Roubaix. Although he knows what it's like to win there, so too does Fabian Cancellara, who finished all by himself when he won. Alessandro Ballan, one of the few Italians who can conquer this race, the great man to conquer this, was Francesco Moser, who won it 3 times straight about 30 years ago.
Well, they're not too far away now from coming into Sizouin. They're 31 kilometers to go to the finish, and the cobblestones at Sizouin comes at around about 27 kilometers. So 4 kilometers before they get to the long section of Bourguel, which is a real tough section. We've seen some great battles on that section in the past. But Bonan looking over his shoulder. I have to say, though, for me, Bonan looks like he's had a very relaxed race here this afternoon. Not too much of a problem for him. He had a flat tire a little bit earlier on. There's Wilfred Peters. Great teammate of Johan Museo for many, many years, and he will keep Tom nice and calm, I think, for the moment, just letting him know that it's pretty much in the bag as long as he doesn't have any problems and doesn't make too many errors.
Well, I don't know about being pretty much in the bag, but we'll see. 30 kilometers was the panel, the sign on the right we've just passed. 30 kilometers, 19 miles or so. Cancellara also gets his bottle now. They're getting to pack on the water now, because soon race rules will forbid any more contact with the riders. It's every man for himself as we charge to Roubaix. These are 3 terrific bike riders, and what a great race it has been to project them out in front. And Stuart O'Grady has ridden totally unselfishly as the defending champion. It could so easily have worked, but it looks as though it's gone in favour of Cancellara. But thank heavens Cancellara was wide awake when Bonan went.
Well, that was the important thing, and they must have been expecting that move. Tom Bonan has shown the form over the last couple of weeks. He was phenomenal in the Tour of Flanders last week, but locked in the main group behind, just as Stuart O'Grady is here this afternoon, because he worked the unselfish work of a teammate.
They're all just a little thick of the left arm there by Tom Bonan. That's to tell the guy behind to come and do his little bit of pacemaking. They'll share the pacemaking. They're rivals, but the common enemy, of course, is the chase behind, and they'll all the time be trying to assess just how strong is he alongside me. Is he shamming? Does he really have the legs to beat me in the finish? They're all trying to assess now just which one is the man to watch.
Yeah, that's the very difficult thing. You've got to look for telltale signs now for the twitch of a rider's knee or the move of the shoulders showing the first signs of fatigue. O'Grady there looking very comfortable to me. Stein de Volder, he's just got to sit there because these guys now are defending. And if Leif Hoster can't do any work at the front here with Mascan, I think it's pretty much the top 3 is decided. But this guy, Phil, we're going to have to follow him very closely, Mascant, over the next couple of months, because he's a great addition to this team.
Oh, absolutely superb. And he'll finish last of the group, mark my words, because these boys will really rough him up in the closing kilometres, but that doesn't matter. He'll be around long after they have retired. Stuart O'Grady here now, his job is to sit there. We call this position the ticket collector's position, because he no longer will want this group to catch up with the leaders. His teammate Cancellara's there. He'll be confident that Cancellara can win this race and share the money. The prize money, by the way, is $50,000 US for the first man over the line.
It's tough for Stuart O'Grady, because just looking at him there, Phil, he's got the form to win Paris-Roubaix this afternoon, but he has to look after the interests of his team, and his teammate Cancellara is in the front. I wouldn't be surprised, though, to see on one of the toughest sections of cobblestones coming up of Stuart O'Grady trying to get clear on his own. He won't drag anybody across with him, but if he feels he can ride across the gap alone, he'll go for it and take the chance.
Absolutely agree, Paul. He will be looking for 4th place in the velodrome, if that's the way it's going to be. Remember, we've still got 6 sectors of cobblestones to go. They can claim anybody at any time.
This is the town of Sizouin. They turn right off the town square. They've got about 500 meters, and then they will start this section of cobblestones from Sizouin to Bourguel. It's a long section as well. It's 1.3 kilometers long, and Tom Bonan knows it very well. After that, they've got a few more sections, but this will look for them to be 6 sections of cobblestones to go at 26 kilometers to go to the finish. Bonan, for me, looks phenomenal this afternoon, but as you've said, this man, Alessandro Ballan, has actually had the easiest ride, because he's taken advantage of everybody else, every other team's work.
Now, you think Paul Sherwin knows the way to Roubaix because he's ridden this race. What was your best finish, Paul?
Well, in this race, actually, I can't remember. I think it was about 15th with the professionals. but it was third with the amateurs. But there's a big difference, Phil, between the amateurs and the professionals.
I think 15th with the professionals is a pretty cool result, I must confess, because
well, I will
this
confess
is the most cruel race.
The 15th place was achieved with 9 crashes.
Oh, goodness me. Well,
it was wet. It was wet.
And because if you finish without your bicycle, you're disqualified. So you've got a way to get your bike fixed. Here we are, Sector 6 now, 1,300 metres, 4 more stars and 3 stars in our picture.
Look at the gap, though, back to the Stuart O'Grady group. It's gone up to 55 seconds. It's going to be a hard call for Stuart O'Grady to ride himself back into this race. But unselfishly, he's not thinking about himself or Australia this afternoon. He's thinking about Team CSC. They've won this race with Stuart O'Grady and Fabian Cancellara for the last 2 years, and he wants to try and make it 3 wins in a row.
And all the horrible weather forecasts we've had all week, it seems to have been wrong. They had a couple of spots of rain out on the course, nothing to even be recorded, I must be honest. And the clouds have stayed white and fluffy, a little bit chilly, the wind is a little bit strong, but it's been a great day for Paris-Roubaix. And the public here, they really are something very, very special. The Tour of Flanders last week, which was held very close to where we are right now, 72% of the nation watching television were watching the bike race.
But look at this bike race. Just look at how Fabian Cancellara's bike is bouncing all over the place. This is a nasty section of cobblestones. It's bouncing the bike riders, it's bouncing all the muscles. It really is a phenomenal performance by Alessandro Ballan on the front end of this group, but it gives you just a chance to see how dangerous Paris-Roubaix is. These guys have been in the saddle for a long time. O'Grady's gone.
He's gone, and he's cracked the 2 boys that had every reason to do all of the work, and he waited, he sat at the back. Now he's getting rid of the big surprise, Martin Maskrant, and that Leif Hoster too is going to have to fight his way back. This is a move by O'Grady. He'll want to rid himself of Stein de Volder. He won't want to carry anybody up to the leaders.
Well, he's seen this, he's seen and felt the form that he's got in his legs here this afternoon. But again, for unselfish Stuart O'Grady, he's decided to limit the chances of...
Just don't give up, do they? I mean, for the last hour and a half, we've only seen a few riders in Paris-Roubaix. Imagine the carnage behind these riders. And by the way, if it's time, you're eliminated from the race. They don't even put you on the result, and that is cruel.
Well, what was cruel was a few years ago, Phil, what they used to do was once the elimination time was over, they used to close the gate and you couldn't even get onto the velodrome. At least they'll let you finish now, but they don't put you in the result.
Which also means you can't get to the showers, and for the riders in Paris-Roubaix, that's probably the most important part of the day.
Leif Hoster clawing his way back there in the red jersey of Silence Lotto. He said, look, O'Grady, you're not going to punish me like that. I've done a lot of work to stay in this bike race this afternoon, and I'm going to just stay with you because we're going to dispute, I think, the 4th place, because I'm absolutely certain now that the top 3 places have gone up the road at 25 kilometres to go. These guys have still got a minute's lead on O'Grady, de Volder and
Martin Maskrant.
Yeah,
but don't forget, a minute is not a lot. Things can change very quickly. This is far from over. As we look now at Tom Bone and those stripes of the rainbow on his cuffs and on his pants, that indicates a former world champion, and he was a great world champion too. You can see the size of this man. He can't climb the Alps, he can't climb the Pyrenees, he'll never win the Tour de France, but he's in his element when he rides a race like this.
He's built, I think, for Paris-Roubaix, and talking to him this week about the fact that he seems to be more built for a race like Paris-Roubaix than the Tour of Flanders. He said, well, it makes no difference to me. I love the Tour of Flanders because it's the race in my own country. It's our world championships. But I do feel that I can ride over the cobblestones, the flatter cobblestones of Roubaix, just a little bit easier. And O'Grady's decided to go again.
Oh, well, Stuart's a fantastic champion today. All he wants to do is get back up alongside his teammate Cancellara and confuse Bonen even more. De Volder is very, very vigilant. He's marking every move. I'm not sure there's very much fuel left in the tank of Leif Hoster and Martin Maskrant.
Well, next section of cobblestones here. Now we're looking at another section. This is again from Bourgel to Wanaha. It's section number 6. It's 1.1 kilometers long, and the fact that it's got 4 stars just gives you that indication that it's a nasty section of cobblestones. Ballan taking up 3rd position there. Just look at the low gears all of these riders are using. A few years ago, it was the question of who can use the biggest gear in a bike race like this, and now what has happened, I think, really since the advent of Lance Armstrong, it's become who has got the most supple pedaling action.
He split the field here. Just reminded me when you spoke to him the other day, Paul, and you told him it was live on television in Australia. What was his reply?
He said, well, there's going to be some very sore heads on Monday morning. He said, probably just about as sore as mine.
Because it's the middle of the night, of course, in Australia, as we're now watching the split here, and our camera goes through the middle. And Martin Maskrant will be speaking of him maybe this year, but certainly next year. He's a youngster growing up, and he's already learned to tame the cobbles on the road to Roubaix. But just for now, the stamina of the strong men will out. And it looks as though we've got Stein de Volder here getting rid of Stuart O'Grady.
Well, de Volder's showing that he really has got a fine pair of legs on him this afternoon. O'Grady, see the way O'Grady went round that corner. Risks is what he was going to take. He wanted to make sure he didn't lose any impetus at all. He wants the wheel of de Volder before we come off the cobblestones, but O'Grady looks good. He's got the fire in his belly here this afternoon. I'm sure, Phil, it's because he knows that probably most of Australia's watching him at around about midnight.
Surrender is a word that does not exist in the book of Stuart O'Grady. That guy will go down fighting right to the limit, and he's back.
Thank you very much, de Volder, but you don't take that one out of me, because I've read all of the tactical books and I know all about Paris-Roubaix. I'm the winner from last year, and you're not going to ride me off your wheel like that. But what it could do, those two riders there could start to eat into the advantage. Thumbs up for Tom Bonan from Wilfred Peters there, but he's still got to beat these two men if he gets to the velodrome with them.
Yes, Tom is going to feel very confident he can do it right now. He's putting himself in the driving seat, but he'll still be very twitchy. There is no easy way to get to the finish. His team car will talk to him whenever they can, give him just the encouragement he needs. The same will apply to Balan, because all team cars are here now for these three leaders. Lamprey for the Italian, Quickstep for Bonan, CSC for Fabian Cancellara. And Cancellara too will be aware of what's going on behind with O'Grady, because they have earpieces. The radios from the team manager will tell them what's going on. And it looks as though Maskrant simply hasn't got the legs to help Hoster get back.
Phil, he's 22 years of age. I'm sure that Leif Hoster must understand that. He knows he's from the neighbouring country of Holland and knows he probably doesn't have much fire left in the engine room. But O'Grady here is being put into serious difficulty by Stein de Volder. O'Grady, let's not forget, is fighting back from a very nasty accident last year, but he will not get himself off that slipstream of de Volder. He wants to stay there. He'll fight and battle till he gets there, and then he may not help him anymore.
You can feel the pain coming out through the television screen right now from those legs of Stuart O'Grady, but he won't give up. He's going to hang on to de Volder, and de Volder can ride alone faster than most men. Cancellara, Bonan, Balan. These are the three riders preparing to fight out the finish of Paris-Roubaix, but it's still 21.5 kilometres away, although we're running out of cobbles now.
A minute and 3 seconds back to the chasers. It's an awful long time, but if these guys start to mess about a fraction, well, then what will happen is that group behind of O'Grady and de Volder will come back to them, and that will make it very confusing for Tom Bonan. Bonan knows that, and he knows that he needs to keep the impetus and the organisation at the front, and he knows that the next section of cobblestones, Phil, is a long section of cobblestones. 1.8 kilometres is the section of cobblestones at Mont-Campin-en-Pévèle. It really is slightly difficult to begin with, slightly uphill, and that's where a few years ago a young man who we'd never heard of before, called Tom Bonan, left his teammate George Hincapie in the ditch.
I'm pretty sure it's where Sean Kelly broke either his handlebars or his forks as well. It's a vicious stretch, and it could be well where any splitting up will happen. And that is our next sector of cobblestones. Now, you see, there's also a psychological battle going on with the team cars now. Quickstep goes up, CSC goes up, so Lamprey go up, just to make sure that everybody knows what the name of the game really is right now.
Well, that's Fabrizio Bontempi in the car, no relation at all to Guido Bontempi, but himself a very good professional bike rider a few years ago. They all now know, they're looking, these guys, they know the terrain that they're racing through. They know that once you get to that little white house on the right-hand side, there's a left-hand bend. They know that a certain tree is an indication that there's 200 meters to go to the left-hand corner before the section of cobblestones. We're 900 meters, Phil, away from the left-hand bend now, and Alessandro Balan wants to get onto the cobbles first, but which one of these three riders will do so?
Well, Balan knows the way. After all, he did make the podium. He finished third in 2006 in this event. That was when Cancellara was storming home. and so he knows all about this. He's one of the few Italians that adapts easily at this time of the year, where the Italians tend to enjoy the racing a little bit more away from the hurly-burly of the Belgian classics. These are for special men.
Well, I think Tom Bonin is wondering, how can I get rid of these two guys with me? But you know what? You don't get rid of Alessandro Ballan and Fabio Cancellara that easily, especially when you know they are seriously motivated. There you can see the section of cobblestones, and if we swing back, you just see a little house on the right-hand side. There it is. They all know that small house there, and they know that that opens up the gate to the 5th section of cobblestones to go.
Well, the cat has 9 lives. How many of these boys got now as they turn left onto the sector number 5 here? We are now joining sector 5, 1800 meters, 4 stars, 20 kilometers, 12 miles to go. Canfin-en-Pévèle, and these 3 boys, I think, have got the race to themselves now. Bonin sits at the back, Cancellara in the middle, Ballan third a couple of years ago in this race. These boys have dominated the top 3 in Paris-Roubaix for 3 years.
Well, as they say in the Flanders, Tommeke, 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 and that is for Tom Bonin, and that is why you can see the Vlaamse Leeuw, the Lion of Flanders flag flying high here. You know, we're only about 3 kilometers away from the Belgian border on a couple of occasions over the next few miles, and that's why they've all turned out here to see their great champion. But they don't want to see him in 3rd place, Phil. They want to see him in 1st place.
And let's see how they handle this sector of cobblestones. Only 4 more after this, and the last one we don't count. It's an honourable ride down the main street in towards the stadium. We have got these riders now behind. There's still an infight between Stein de Volder and Stuart O'Grady. We think the other 2 have been detached, but for the moment our camera's on, taking us back there. But we're looking here now at the bumping and barging of Alessandro Ballan, who's trying to spoil the party here with the 2 previous winners of the Paris-Roubaix. 19 kilometers to go, a minute 20 back to the 4th man on the road.
That's a massive gap back to De Volder, Stuart O'Grady, and we're not sure whether or not Leif Hoster has made the junction. You can see now that Tom Bonin has decided he wants to dictate his own tempo on the front end of this race, and he knows the next section of cobblestones is a long, hard section with a slight climb in it. You can see Bonin allowing the other 2 guys to come forward there. I was a little bit surprised at him relinquishing 1st place. This is the next group. It's back down to 4 men. You can see Hoster and Maskant at the front there. He's managed to stay in this bike race. He's a man for the future, certainly, after his week in the Flandrian Classics.
Well, they've all come back together. Hats off to the youngster for Slipstream Chipotle at the back there, Martin Maskrant. He suffered today, but he's still in the action. Heck, he's riding for the top 7 finish in Paris-Roubaix at the 1st attempt.
That is phenomenal. 12th last weekend in the Tour of Flanders, and he's now thinking whether or not he can get himself in the top 5, but he needs to sit back and save his energy if he wants to. These men, though, have got to try and figure out how do we get rid of the other 2 guys with us, because the best way to win Paris-Roubaix is to win it on your own. If you come onto the velodrome in a sprint for 3, it is such a strange sprint, especially if you don't have the track skills.
These are very nervous moments now, as those bikes shudder and bang over the cobblestones. They produce snake bite punctures where the back of the rim just snaps at the tyre, 2 little pinpricks, and down goes the tyre. And that's what these boys will be worried about now. They'll try to pick as smooth a way through as possible. They're tired, they're desperate, and they've got to take chances. And I would be very worried about Alessandro Ballan right now.
Yeah, he's a fantastic bike rider, seriously motivated by the cobblestones of the north of France and, of course, across the border in Belgium. He's riding in the middle of the cobblestones. It's not the ideal place to ride at the side here, because that's where you could provoke that little flat tyre you were talking about. The bikes are trying to get in there. They're trying to get themselves at the photograph of the moment when one of these riders moves clear.
Well, as we continue, the Slipstream boy dodging around at the back, but still hanging on in there. They're looking for the smoother road, which will leave them with just 4 sectors of pavé to go. These are the riders going for 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th in Paris-Roubaix today. O'Grady willing to share the work here with Leif Hoster. They've got to keep the pressure on, otherwise the riders behind will pull them back.
That's the important thing now. It's a question of consolidating and making sure that you keep payment for all of the work you've put in here this afternoon, and they need to make sure they stay in front of that group that contains George Hincapie, Juan Antonio Fletcher and the rest of the remnants of Paris-Roubaix this afternoon. O'Grady had the legs, I have to say, Phil, I think, to be in that move, but he got caught out because of the team tactics. That's the important thing to remember. It's about the team sometimes, and sometimes you have to lay down and give it for your teammate.
Leif Hoster on the far right of the road, the survivor of Ceylon's Lotto. And 3 leaders are way through the crowd there, a minute and a half in front now, heading for sector the Pavé, which will be the Carrefour de l'Arbre. That will be sector 4. There's all the campers that have come out to watch the race here. This fantastic crowd, many of them from Belgium, which is not very far away now. The Italian flag flying proudly, as well as off sector 5 go the 4 chasers in Paris-Roubaix.
Well, they've got themselves around about 3 kilometres before they get to the famous cobblestones of the Pavé de l'Arbre, and that's where this leading group is. Sometimes in this part of France they call these the Pavé Bleu, the blue cobblestones, because they are very dark blue granite, and when they are wet they are absolutely and utterly treacherous. Now this is a section of cobblestones where if you've got the legs you can make the move here.
Well, look, though, Big Tom rattled off to the right there and didn't hold his bike down tight enough on that left-hander. Straight through goes Alessandro Ballan, and through on him goes a big effort here by Fabian Cancellara. That is a serious step on the gas pedal.
Well, he knows that this is not yet the moment to make the move. It's when you come to the false flat, and Tom Boonen is paying attention. He's sitting on the back wheel of Alessandro Ballan. Don't give Fabian Cancellara 1 metre, because 1 metre becomes 5, and Boonen knows that. He says, let me come by. You can't let a man like Cancellara have a gap on the Pavé de l'Arbre. Boonen's got the legs in him today.
Do you know what? Cancellara waited there until he saw Boonen take the third wheel, and he thought he'd have a go. Boonen got round him, got on him, so gas has come off now on Cancellara. 3 riders together again, and time continues to run out. That was a first serious little foray by Fabian Cancellara.
But it also was the first time we saw any weakness in Alessandro Ballan. We're now about to take another left-hand turn here, and that's when the road climbs up to the Pavé de l'Arbre, the Café de l'Arbre, and that is where, if you've got the power, you can ride away from anybody. And Boonen's going to try.
A massive crowd, and these boys are going to be shouting Tom's name now, because they're all probably Flemish people here, come across the border to see this great race. It's one of the few races that more Belgian riders have won than French riders in the French country. Cancellara, Boonen, Ballan. Oh, and they went wide again, but they held it.
Well, I don't think I've seen a crowd on the Pavé de l'Arbre like this, Phil, for many, many years, and they're all shouting for their own favourite hero. 2.1 kilometres long, a 5-star section of cobbles.
2.1 kilometres on the Pavé de l'Arbre, and this is sector 17 here, or 3 to go, and these boys are just fighting it out, tooth and nail. All swords are drawn.
It is a hard section of cobblestones. We've already covered a form of fraction of it, but it climbs up towards the summit, and the famous little coffee shop at the top there called the Café de l'Arbre. They get a bit of respite. They'll turn right and left at the top, and then they'll have another section of cobblestones after that. But Boonen, for me, is dictating the pace at the point where he knows it's the most dangerous in a group of 3 like this.
Well, I think he's very wise to get to the front just now, simply because he can see his way through this massive crowd, and he can try and keep himself on course. Cancellara has had a little dig on this cobblestone stretch. He got master, but he's let Tom Boonen know he's up for the fight, and again riding Paris-Roubaix once more.
Well, I tell you what, Boonen was very alert when he saw that happen. He saw that slight gap appear, and he knew that was the moment to come forward. And as soon as he did, he accelerated across the gap, and that was the indication to me that Boonen's got the legs here this afternoon, but he's still got 2 riders with him, and he's got to be worried about taking them all the way to the velodrome. There's the Café de l'Arbre there. It's a very small little cafe, only opens once a year, and this is the end of that section of cobblestones. But I'll tell you what, there'll be a lot of beer drunk in that cafe tonight.
Well, let's hope they take a few bob today if they're closing for the next 364 days. But anyway, Paris-Roubaix goes on. 14.3 kilometres to go. The gap continues to open at 1:37. Might drop a little bit now because they've stopped racing for the moment. This is the second group here. Stein de Volder, unusually so, slips into the ticket collecting position now. O'Grady has moved up behind Leif Hoster.
Well, they're leaving it all up to Leif Hoster now. They're pretty much on the same section of cobblestones as the guys who were there with a few moments ago. But the leaders now, Phil, are around the corner. You can see all the caravans that have come out to see Paris-Roubaix here. They've brought with them a phenomenal crowd as well. O'Grady, Hoster, de Volder and Maskant. But they are 1.5 minutes in arrears of the 3 leaders of this bike race, who are actually, by the way, on the next section of cobblestones, the cobblestones of Gruzon, a section itself of 1.1 kilometres in length.
Well, this is a corridor of frenzied noise here as the riders complete their stretch of this particular stretch at the l'Arbre. and then they too will be heading in. 17 kilometres inside now, just over 16 kilometres to go for these three riders. For the moment, picking up a tailwind, and Alessandro Ballan just wondering how is he going to tame Tom Bonen and Fabian Cancellara, the two men who have won this race before.
Well, I tell you what, Phil, you've got to be worried and nervous at a situation like this, because you know you've got two phenomenal competitors up against you. Any which way, any one of those riders is a winner of Paris-Roubaix this afternoon. Alessandro Ballan is looking to take it to Italy. Bonen's looking to take it to Belgium. Cancellara wants to take it to Switzerland, but Team CSC have dominated this race for the last 3 years, and they'd love to make it 3 in a row. They're all trying to figure out, what do we do? We cannot take Bonen to the finish. He's just too fast.
Little bit of a gap here. Ballan's going to have to step on and close this gap down at 15 kilometres to go. Sector 3, 1,100 metres and 2 stars. And they are now moving onward from that. The last Italian to win this race, by the way, was Andrea Taffi. He's now retired. He did it back in 1999.
In fact, Andrea Taffi retired from the sport on this very velodrome. He decided he wanted to ride Paris-Roubaix just one more time, so he came here, and this was his last professional bike race. After that, he retired from the sport, but he's still pretty much around at many of the events. Bonen, I think, just a little test acceleration there to see who was weak and who was strong in this group, but I think it indicated Alessandro Ballan may well be showing his first signs of weakness. Look at Tom's face.
If you think it's easy for the stars, Paul, they make it look easy, but they're suffering like anybody else, and Cancellara's gone.
Well, Tom was ready for that. Don't forget, Tom Bonen is one of the greatest sprinters in the world, and he's going to sprint right onto this. There are not really too many places, Phil, where you can get clear now, so you've got to be very alert. There's one more section of cobblestones, which I regard as a fairly easy section of cobblestones. That's the cobblestone section at M. It's 1.4 kilometres in length, but look at this acceleration here from Fabian Cancellara.
So they're all together, even though this is an attempted attack to lead them here by Fabian Cancellara. There are 3 riders now taking us into the last 10 kilometres of Paris-Roubaix, and it is still pick any one from 3.
Well, it's hard to pick. I have to tell you, Alessandro Ballan is wondering, wow, these guys have still got the power and the ability to throw attacks at each other. There's no respite at all in this, and they will race this all the way down to the finish line. I still have to say, if I have to pick a winner out of this, if he doesn't make a mistake, it's got to be Tom Bonen. He is the fastest man, but on the velodrome, Phil, it's always very dodgy.
I've just had a horrible thought, Paul. The railroad crossing is still to come.
Exactly. I've been thinking about that for the last few minutes as well, and hope that they get through there without the railway crossing coming down and falsifying what has been a brilliant race so far. The race, the next place where they go across the railway crossing is in around about 4 kilometres from here.
It's very close to 10 kilometres to go. I'll tell you what happened 2 years ago when Cancellara was the winner. The riders who would have finished 2nd, 3rd and 4th ducked under the closed barriers a minute ahead of the train going through, and they were disqualified. And so this year, everybody's paying very close attention. They even check the timetables of the SNCF trains, and they are due round about the time the race gets there.
Well, it's a big freight route as well from here up across to the Belgian border, and I don't think they'll be stopping any of those trains. So these guys have just got to hope that they time it to absolute and utter perfection, because if they have to stop now and the group behind starts to approach, they will restart with the gap that they had. But if they don't come back, then the race will continue.
Well, Cancellara just waving Big Tom through. They're still working together, even though they are no longer friends. That is quite evident now. Tom just takes a drink and thought, I'm not bothering. Alessandro Ballan says, well, I'm not bothering. So they're now all shutting down a little bit. This is in the favour of the group behind. They might just start to play a little bit of these cat and mouse tactics now, feeling they've got the race between themselves as we continue to race across towards the outskirts of Roubaix. Around about 12 or 13 kilometres remaining.
Well, just cross your fingers about now, because we're looking at around about 1 kilometre to the railroad crossing, and if those barriers start to come down, they'll have to stop this bike race for a little while we wait for the train to come through.
The rules are very hairy-fairy, I have to say. If they get through the open crossing and they close the crossing afterwards, then they will stop the chasing riders, and therefore it'll be an advantage to the breakaway. If the breakaway get caught before the crossing, the chances are they will time the gap and then start the other riders once they've crossed the crossing. We'll wait and see.
600 metres now to the railroad crossing. Fabian Cancellara, last time they came here, he was straight across that gap, and then the railway crossing came down behind him. I don't think it changed the result at the end of the day. It might have changed second, third and fourth, but certainly not the victory.
But the big question was the red light flashing when Cancellara went across? And nobody ever did answer that question.
Well, we never saw the footage on that occasion, did we? Look at the time gap, though, back to the chasers. 2 minutes and 17 seconds. The winner of Paris-Roubaix now is going to come from this three-man group, as long as they get across the railway crossing safely.
Here we go. Alessandro Bilan is heading the train towards the crossroads, and in second place Fabian Cancellara. He won 5 major time trials last year, including the World Championships. There's the 10 kilometres to go. We are desperately close to the crossing.
And the railway crossing, it was just there at the 10 kilometre to go point, so don't worry, everybody's across safely. We've got 10 kilometres to go, 6 miles of racing now. 2 more sections of cobblestones. One is fairly long, the section at Hem. The final section at 1.5 kilometres to go, Phil. Well, it's ornamental. It could be in your back garden.
It's absolutely, and look, they've resurfaced the road as well for Paris-Roubaix coming in. The smoother stretch of road. What sort of irony is that at 10 kilometres to go now? Of course, we're in the stadium, which was empty when we started commentating some hours ago, but now it is absolutely packed. And everybody here watching a big screen, and they're really, of course, cheering for Tom Bonen, because just about 5 or 8 kilometres away is Belgium, and that's where King Tom lives.
That's what it's all about for Tom Bonen. He really has to do something here this afternoon. He's got the pressure of Belgium and the pressure of Flanders on his shoulders. He is one of the greatest sprinters in the world, but normally when he comes down to a sprint, he's got a couple of teammates alongside him, Phil, to lead him out and get him up to top speed. But he does have a great amount of track knowledge. He rides the track during the winter months, either at Antwerp or down in Ghent, especially when the weather is really bad and howling in the northern climes in the winter season. And so he knows exactly how to handle the banking, but so too does Fabian Cancellara.
It is going to be a real difficult sprint, a very tense sprint. It is very rarely that a top road racing cyclist get the chance to perform on an indoor velodrome. In our case, an outdoor velodrome here at Roubaix. This is the home of Paris-Roubaix. We stopped coming here for a couple of years in the mid-80s. We went downtown Roubaix. There was no atmosphere. So back came the race to this lovely velodrome, which has since been resurfaced. It's got a steep bank of about 36 degrees at the angle of it on the corners, which is not a steep track by the world of track cycling these days, but it can course with some great tactical thinking. Once they're into the stadium and they get the earplugs out because there's going to be a big cheer, they go through the finishing line, they get the bell. It's one more lap of the track after that.
Tomaca Bonen now starting to look concentrated, number 51 on his back. He knows that the man just behind him wearing number 5 who won this bike race 2 years ago, he knows he's won this bike race himself, and there's the indication over the top. 2 to go.
We are looking at sector number 2, the last real stretch of cobblestones in this year's Paris-Roubaix. 1,400 metres, a mere 1 star. Hem is where we are. 8 kilometres or 5 miles to go. And these 3 boys, an Italian, a Swiss rider and a Belgian, are proving inseparable.
Well, I remember this section of cobblestones when Henny Kuiper won this bike race, Phil, back in 1983, and that was a section where Henny Kuiper was in the lead by around about 30 seconds over the chasers, and flipping across from left to right here is very dangerous. You've got 2 smooth pieces of road on either side, but you've got a ridge of cobblestones in between, and Kuiper popped his tyre off, and that's certainly what you wouldn't want to happen now to any of these riders. And you may well remember a few years ago it happened to a certain Johan Museo as well.
Well, just look at Tom Bonen here. He's won everything anyway. He's got the flashes there of a world champion. He rides looking very confident. He's won this race before. So too is the rider at the back, Fabian Cancellara, the faithful teammate of Stuart O'Grady, who rode brilliantly to get Cancellara into a position now to win this race. And Fabian will try to do just that. And the camera's always focusing on those tyres. Looks a bit soft, that back tyre. I hope it's not the case.
Well, they run the tyres just a little bit softer in Paris-Roubaix, down to around about 5.5 atmospheres or around about 70 PSI. That's still a lot harder than a car tyre. But I tell you one thing, I don't want any of these bike riders to have any bad luck at all, because every one of these three riders, Phil, in the last few kilometres deserves a crack at victory on the Velodrome Stadium. But this is the dangerous part, as I was explaining to you. When you flick across from left to right, right to left, that little line of cobblestones on that side there is a very difficult, precarious thing to bunny hop across, especially when you've been in the saddle for a good 6 hours.
Just looking at Alessandro Balan's handlebars there, padded a little bit, and I'm not surprised. Same here with Tom Bone, a bit thicker, more tape on than usual to try and give them a more comfortable rest on the cobbles.
A nice specialised bike there for Tom Bonen as well, and it's got this special little gel in the stays and the forks just to try and take a little bit of the vibration out of the cobblestones. There it is, they're almost at the end of the cobblestone section of M, and now what they will do is line themselves up for the finish line.
Well, the bikes on the back don't look to have been called in for too much use, at least not while they're following these three. We are now off Sector 2. We have done 252 kilometres now. We're heading towards the finish. Just 7 kilometres left to ride, and the last kilometre is in the stadium itself. And Tom Bonen takes a drink. He's done all that's expected of him so far. The Belgians will be happy with the day so far, but can he win?
Well, he has to finish it off if he's to keep his star status over the border in Belgium and in the Flanders, and he knows exactly how to win bike races. But you know, when you've got that much pressure on your shoulders, you make silly mistakes, and you make one mistake here on the Velodrome, and you've lost the queen of the classics.
You don't come back, that's absolutely right. And Balan there has already had 1/3 2 years ago. He might well have to be another third this time out, but we'll find out. The checkered flag, 6.5 kilometres. The last stretch of cobbles is only about 300 metres long. It's down the high street. Once they bounce off it, into the stadium, past the showers, into the actual Velodrome itself, and then comes the big cheer, and then they fight it out.
I've got to say, I think the team managers are probably all starting to get a little bit nervous now. Fabrizio Bontempi coming up alongside Balan to give him some advice. I wonder what advice he can give him to try and outfox a man like Tom Bonen and Fabian Cancellara.
Not the best place there. He got sliced out on the corner, but I should imagine the race referees will have told him to stop, because at this distance, 6 kilometres from the finish, they really don't want to start talking to the riders. So 3 riders now, 6 kilometres to go, and then we'll know who wins the 106 Paris-Roubaix.
Fabian Cancellara, arm in the air. I think he just wants a little bit of advice. I don't think it's a mechanical problem for him. We're now in the outskirts of the town of M. In fact, at around about 3.5 kilometres to go, there's a nasty little climb at the Avenue Alfred Mott. And that would be a good place to try and launch the attack if you've got it, but Bonen knows that, and he'll be alert. He's got the acceleration, I think, to go with any move here this afternoon.
It's at the end of the Avenue Alfred Mott where they fling onto the central cobblestones and race down towards the finish. Little flick of the arm there, and Fabian wants somebody to come past, and Tom Bonen's not too interested, but oh, all right, then I'll come through. And takes with him Balan. They're still working together. 3 great bike riders, 3 riders at the top of their career.
They've got plenty to play with here this afternoon. There's no need to panic now. They've got to think tactically and sensibly on how they're going to get the victory for themselves and for their country, and of course for their team. They've got a good 2.5 minutes advantage over the next guys on the race, and at 5 kilometres to go, they know that. They've been here before. They've all 3 of them ridden Paris-Roubaix previously. 2 of them have won it. 1 of them hasn't, but he's been on the podium, and that's Alessandro Balan, who's currently sitting there in 3rd place in the blue and pink jersey of Team Lampre.
You notice Tom Bonen there playing with his little earpiece in his right ear there. He's trying to hear what Wilfred Peters is saying in the car behind. They don't always work that well, especially when the ear's got a little bit of sweat in there by now, I would imagine, followed by quite a lot of dust. Anyway, Bonen now is going to start feeling very nervous. Is that going to cost him Paris-Roubaix? 4.7 kilometres to go to the finish. The last kilometre really is through the track and onto the Velodrome. These riders shoulder to shoulder, and the one man who hasn't moved is Alessandro Balan. He's either racing for 3rd place or he's waiting for a late attack.
Well, this is the place to attack if you can. This is the Avenue Alfred Mott. It's slightly uphill. It doesn't look very much from the camera angle here, but I can tell you, after around about 257 kilometres of racing, Phil, it is certainly going to hurt. Bonen is looking very concentrated. He will not wait for anybody to attack. He's got to stay with this group.
We are back now with Tom Bonen here. The flashes of a world champion goes into the lead. We're 4 kilometres from the end. There is the stadium. Look at the crowd down there. There is an awful lot of people down there. They come in from beneath our picture. There's the 4 kilometres to go, and it is going to be a sprint, Paul. I can't see anybody getting away now.
Well, Bonin is too alert. Fabian Cancellara has thrown 1 or 2 little test attacks down, but Bonin has responded to all of them. Alessandro Ballan, I think, is trying to conserve as much energy as possible because he knows that if he wants to do it for Italy here this afternoon, he's really going to have to do something very special because he's up against one of the fastest men in the world and one of the best tacticians in Fabian Cancellara. Remember how he won a stage in the Tour de France last year with the yellow jersey on his shoulder, started from Compiègne.
Yes, he won in Compiègne, where this race started from, when he won a stage of the Tour de France wearing the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey of leader. He has the ability, he knows it. But now will come the cat and mouse tactics, and always the one they can never be sure of is Ballan. He can sprint. He finished 4th in the Tour de Flanders, a race in which he's finished 5th, 6th, and he won it last year. So he's not automatically a 3rd place candidate.
I don't think anybody's a candidate for a certain candidate for 1st place at the moment, Phil, because you've got to remember as well, they've all had a very long, hard day in the saddle, and the body reacts in different ways. None of them, I don't think, have been involved in any accidents or incidents out on the road. They've never, any one of them, had to chase back from a badly timed flat tire, so they should be starting off on equal chances. Bonin is the fastest on paper.
We're looking for 3 kilometres. Ballan's turn to go to the front. It's all going to change in a minute once they come onto the track. There it is, 3 kilometres to the finish. Slightly downhill now as we run out onto the main street. Then we'll flip onto the cobblestones. They're not much, they're only 300 metres. And now Ballan has been here before. He currently is helping these 2 boys. He knows the ability of Tom Bonin. He knows, and he's been beaten by Cancellara in this very race.
I have to tell you, Phil, I'm not sure about yourself, but I'm starting to feel a little bit nervous about this sprint down towards the finish because it is going to be a very unpredictable finish. I think you've got to be very careful now if your name is Tom Bonin, because one mistake in the final corner at 250 metres to go, the race is lost.
Well, this is the road now of Alfred Mott, and in the middle there shortly we will move across to a little section they added a few years ago where it's nice clean cobblestones, but it just reminds them that they are leaving the Queen of the Classics behind for 1 more year. And leading towards that switch in the pavé is Ballan, followed now by Tom Bonin. Bonin now is twitchy. He's watching Cancellara. He won't trust him. Cancellara won Milan San Remo with a late rush for the line. He can expect a late attack.
Well, it's a different scenario now because on that occasion Cancellara was riding away from almost the whole field from a large group. Here there are only 2 other men in the group with him. They will be alert. They will now be waiting for a last-minute burst. I think it's going to go down to the sprint. It's a question of who is going to lead the sprint out. If I was Tom Bonin, I would try and force Fabian Cancellara to go into 1st place, but keep a very close eye on the man at the back there wearing number 71, because Alessandro Ballan wanted to win the Tour of Flanders last week. He didn't come up with the goods there, but he did say, I'm coming back to Paris-Roubaix and I want to win that one too.
Just look at this wonderful crowd here. We're looking for the kite, which indicates a kilometre to ride to the stadium. 258 kilometres almost under the wheels of these guys now. They've been beaten to pieces by 51 kilometres of broken roads, and there are still 3 of them together. Cancellara willing to, here's the switch from the main road into the central reservation and down the smooth stretch of cobblestones. These don't hurt, and these boys are floating right now. It'll be a right turn into the stadium.
It's such a shame after a brilliant battle we've seen here this afternoon that these men, only one can be the winner of Paris-Roubaix this afternoon. Bonin says, okay, Fabian, you sit there because I'm going to keep a very close eye on you. 1,000 metres to go. They're making the right-hand bend, then a left and then a right, and they will be in the velodrome, and you just wait for that cheer.
We're into the velodrome. They're already applauding inside the stadium. We're not even there yet, as we still got the bend to take before we flick onto the track. A daunting prospect if you're not a track cyclist and you see the velodrome here. A massive crowd. Here we go now, and it's going to be Alessandro Ballan who leads Cancellara and Bonin into the stadium. They are onto the track. There's the big screen we've just passed where the crowd have been enjoying this exhibition of incredible bike riding. Now this first half lap will be very, very cautious.
very cautious, very nervous. Once they come up to the line, they will hear the bell. There it is. That indicates 500 meters to go. It's still Balin in first position. Second position, Fabian Cancellara. The crowd are cheering them around. Bonin, for the moment, Phil, is in an ideal position. He's in command here. He can see exactly what the other two guys are doing.
Well, Alessandro Balin, as he goes into the back straight, he's not going to hold off the two previous winners of this race. He's starting to sprint now. On his right shoulder is where he's just come into the stadium. Tom Bonin, a little bit of track skill here. He's going to go early. He's over the top of Cancellara. He's over the top of Alessandro Balin. He wins Paris-Roubaix for a second time. And where does he get the power from? Big Tom is an absolute superstar. He salutes the crowd and he's shown the Belgian press he really is the best.
Well, Tom Bonin didn't actually win that sprint, Phil. He walked away with it. He had the power. His kick immediately opened 4 or 5 bike lengths over everybody else. Big Tomaca Bonin, he had to do something today, and I think the Belgian press are going to be quite easy on him tomorrow.
Well, he'll be front page news, but it was a great classic race, this one was, Paul. I mean, Stuart O'Grady, let's have a look quick for a few moments. Look at this again now. Bonin, he just found extra gas there. He was in 98 octane as he came up the line, and behind Cancellara, I think, knew he couldn't handle that. And I'm not sure whether Balin got second or third. I'm just, our cameras isn't going to show us here.
Pretty close between the two of them. We're keeping a very close eye on Tom, now. How happy is that face?
There's
and
Lefebvre.
How happy is Patrick Lefebvre there with the grey hair on the left-hand side? He's done it. He's broken the stranglehold of Team CSC and brought it back to his team, Team Quickstep.
He's won this race with so many different riders, Patrick Lefebvre. Bonin, Cancellara, Balin is the order on the line. That is a fantastic result for all three of them. And it was a great race, 259 kilometres, and they are in. But let's not forget the race for fourth.
Well, this is the race for the rest. Stein de Volder there, and the fact that we're moving away here would indicate to me that somebody's clipped off the front of this group, and it looks to me as if it's the colour of one of the riders from Slipstream.
No, it can't be Martin Mascran. The boy is going to be the boy is going to be what Tom Bonin was 4 years ago when we first talked of him and he came home in the third place. And now Martin Mascran is clear for Slipstream Chipotle. He's going to enter the stadium ahead and he could well be finishing fourth.
Well, keep your fingers crossed because he deserves fourth place, that young man from Team Slipstream Chipotle. Here he is on the cobblestones. There's the banner indicating 1 kilometre to go. He has got himself into fourth position on the road here. Keep your fingers crossed for this guy because he deserves fourth place.
He has ridden so well. Jonathan Vaughters will be beside himself. This is a counting event as far as he's concerned to qualify his Tour de France place for Slipstream. Back to the finishing line, replay again. That's how you win a sprint finish, as you come clear of your rivals. He was keeping the best till last. Bonin, a winner again of Paris-Roubaix. But with all eyes out now for the Slipstream Chipotle rider. There he is on the track, the lone figure, as he now comes in. Well, this is an incredible performance by him. 22, I think he's 22 years of age, Paul. He was an elite amateur last year, signed for Slipstream Chipotle, and here's the result, because the boys are in the stadium behind him, but they're not going to catch him.
The boys on the behind him are halfway up the banking, but this man now has got 500 metres to go. Phenomenal performance over this week by this young man, Phil, because 12th last week in the Tour of Flanders. We could have said that was a little bit of luck, but there's no such thing in luck in Flanders, but here, fourth place in Paris-Roubaix. That's confirmation that Slipstream Chipotle are riding themselves into the big time.
But surely he won't get a place in the Tour de France on the team this year. He's too young for that, but you never know. He doesn't look like he's got a very young body. There's a lot of stamina down there for this rider. Himself a good time trialist. He powers round. First Paris-Roubaix, he's in fourth place. What's to come for the future for him? And what a result for Jonathan Vaughters' Slipstream Chipotle team.
They've got to be very happy with that. The sprint coming forward now for third place, fifth place, I'm going to have to say. This young man has got a lap to go. That looks like Johan van Sommeren coming in there. That's a great performance by him.
He's done well, but Stuart O'Grady is going to take it for fifth. O'Grady, what a result for him too. His teammate gets second. O'Grady, the defending champion, comes home in fifth place.
Leif Hoster just behind him and Stein de Volder taking up the rear, but I have to say that's a great performance by Johan van Sommeren for all of the work that he did here this afternoon.
And Van Summeren, remember, he was the rider that started that move. Well, he is still clear of the field and is going to take the 8th place. So the 8-man breakaway did survive the day. There he is.
There he is, looking over his shoulder. No need to worry at all, Johan. You're going to come across the line there and get yourself a phenomenal 8th place. Well, they're a lap behind.
He finishes, they're a lap down. How good is that?
Well, that's
Take it easy.
Roger Hammond in that group there, and I think with George Hincapie just behind him.
So the top 8 that made the move survived to the end. There's a good sprint here for 2nd place there, for 9th place it is, yes, at the moment. 2 Team High Road boys nailed to the front, but there's a move up on the inside here by Frances de Jeux. And the final move, and I think is going to be, is this Fletcher producing a sprint like this?
Fletcher, Guédon and Hincapie coming into the final corner.
At 9th place, and Guédon coming up on the shoulder, Hincapie going for the inside. They fan out just a little bit. Watch the line. I'm not sure who got that. It wasn't Baldato, surely.
Hincapie got the 9th place there.
Hincapie up on the inside, we think it was. The photo will tell us later. But there's the top 7 of the result of Paris-Roubaix. Tom Boonen wins in just inside 6 hours. That is fast. Cancellara, same time as Alessandro Ballan. Marty Mascrant, the man of the future, in 4th. Stuart O'Grady, the defending champion, crosses in 5th. Leif Hoster is in 6th. And Stein de Volder, the Belgian champion, completes the top 7, just on 4 minutes behind.
Well, George, once again, Lady Luck had a big part of your Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah, unfortunately my wheel broke at the most crucial point of the race. I had great legs. My teammates were awesome today. We were attacking, we were strong. But my wheel broke, and by the time I got back, the 8 guys were away, so we wasn't much we could do at that point.
It was a shame, really, because for most of the race, Team High Road looked like they were pretty much in control. You always had guys around you, but that's what Paris-Roubaix is all about sometimes, isn't it? Not a question of having good luck, but not having bad luck.
Absolutely. You know, I think I can honestly say I think I had the best legs of my career today in Paris-Roubaix, so it's a real disappointment, but at the same time, I'm in a little better shape than last time I did Paris-Roubaix, so I don't have anything broken, and had great legs. Didn't work out with the luck, but I'll live to fight another day.
So not having great legs, not having bad luck would have changed this race completely for you today. So what's the rest of the season going to offer to George Hincapie?
A little bit of a break. I'm going to go home and do Georgia. Hopefully it's not too hard. I'm sure I'm going to be a little bit tired for that race. And then get ready for the Tour de France. The team's been riding awesome this year. We probably have more wins than anybody in the whole peloton. So it's just been it's been an awesome year so far, and we're going to keep trying to win races.
You want to come back and win this Queen at least once in your career?
I got to win it. You know, I'm disappointed with not being able to win today, but I know that it's still possible.
Tom, there was a lot of pressure on your shoulders, but you came up with the goods and you got the Paris-Roubaix you were looking for.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure, but was not a big problem. I think I don't put the pressure in my mind, and I was just really focused to do a good job today and to win the race. I was not thinking about all the pressure they gave me, and I think now everybody will be happy, and especially me and the team.
Were you not thinking about the sprint on the track, because 3 riders working hard together, you never know for certain that you're going to win, but the way you came out of that last corner.
Yeah, I have a little bit of track experience, and no, I don't have to be afraid to wait for a sprint, especially not after a hard classic like this. And I saw the last 20 kilometers. I was a little bit afraid in the beginning when we were in front with the 3. It's always difficult. Yeah, that's it. But the last 20 Ks, I felt that it was changing, that I got better, and the other guys were getting cramped, and I saw the legs weren't turning as they were supposed to do. And after Fabian's last attack on Carrefour de l'Arbre, I was not sure, but I was trying to make him come with me to the track and beat him in the sprint. Well done, thank you.
There is confirmation of the result. Boonen, Cancellara, Ballan, Mascrant. The top 10 completed by the oldest man in the race, Fabian Baldato, just 40 years of age. And George Hincapie of the USA getting 9th place, and never really had a chance today, and he was going great. But again, a victim of bad luck in this year's Paris-Roubaix. Well, I can hear the music, so very shortly our cameras are going to switch down to the center of the velodrome here in Roubaix. There's our little self-made hut, and there's the man standing alone. He's been there before, but this time it is very, very special for Tom Bonan. He is back on top as winner of Paris-Roubaix, the 106th edition. This is when you've got to save a little bit of strength for the cobblestone, and there it is. He's got two now, and the man off to our left, he's just gone off screen there, is Bernard Hinault, the great winner of the Tour de France. He said this was inhuman and this race should never be allowed. And there he is on the left in smiles. So he rode it and he won it in 1981, just so he could tell the organisers he'd never ride this race again. And there's the balloons I was telling you about. Up into a blue sky, that wasn't forecast. Mind you, I think a lot of people forecast the victory of Tom Bonan. So as the balloons go into the sky and Tom Bonan collects his big lump of granite, I hope you've enjoyed the coverage. For Paul Sherwin, who's left my side for the moment, I'm Phil Liggett saying we'll see you next time. It was a great race, wasn't it? Goodbye.